other thing, of course, I have new hair. We both have fresh hair now. Um, so yeah, my joke that I used to say all the time, and it's like kind of ironic considering I think it was like almost a year since the last time I got my hair done, is that you know the story of Samson and Delilah, where his hair is his power, and when he gets his hair cut, like that's when he loses his power. For me, it's hair color. I feel like hair color is my power.
It is.
Yeah. Um. Anyways, so.
Oh yeah, so to talk about just like Percy Jackson stuff,
Mhm.
um, the first thing is the stuff with like the artwork.
Yeah.
So in there's this, I forget where it came from, in somewhere in Asia, because it had the like kind of characters on the screen. Forget which country though in Asia. There was like a slightly longer clip of the Sea of Monsters like kind of commercial thing that was going around.
Mhm.
And one of the clips was the main thing from that was Percy like running down the hallway, which we'll talk about a little bit in a second. But
Mhm.
one thing from that is my friend Sophia, that's in the chat now too. She brought up that he was running down the hallway, and the first thing I saw when I noticed he had like paintings on the wall, and I was
Mhm.
like, Luke, who told you you're allowed to appreciate art? I don't think that I don't think that I gave you permission to do that. Um, or anyone else for that matter. And Sophia was like, I bet they're like Renaissance paintings about like the gods and stuff like that. And somebody found that the painting is Kronos and His Son by Giovanni Francesco Raminelli from the like the 1600s. And I
Mhm.
was like, that is, oh my God. Like I saw it when someone figured that out, and I was like, okay, whoever like designed the sets, I want to meet you and talk to you because you seem like a really fun person
Mhm.
to find this stuff. But it also is just a really, I'm like, that is a really good idea though about
Mhm.
the set of the ship of the Princess Andromeda, because I'm just like picturing them being, especially if they get on the ship and they still don't know that
Mhm.
it's Luke's ship, like in the books they don't know that it's Luke's ship. Like how creepy that would be to get on this weird ship that has like these weird people that are walking around looking like they're in a trance, and then they're walking down the hallways and all of the paintings are of the Greek gods, but they're all but it's all like Kronos like eating his children, or other like kind of paintings like that, more about him, or like the old gods or the Titans or whatever. They would just be like so freaked out, like, where are we right now? Before
Yeah.
they even like hear Luke or anything. And I'm like, that is just such like a perfect juxtaposition. Like
Mhm.
I really liked that, I guess, like artistic style of it all, of them being on
Yeah.
this really fancy, nice looking like ship with all these fancy like paintings and things like that, and then realizing like, oh, we're literally in hell right now. um and especially considering that they end up back there at some point at the end, and it's not a happy experience when they're there at the end either. But either way, I was just like, I want to know who got to do all the research about the Renaissance paintings. Can I
Yeah.
do that job? Like, I will do that job. I love paintings and Renaissance. I don't know why. I like older Renaissance-ish art, or like Spanish art for some reason a lot. I don't know.
Mhm.
I've always liked that since I was a kid.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think it's a great choice. Of course, Kronos would be like, let's put pictures of me all over.
Well, especially because the picture is like him with like he's holding like Zeus with like his foot, and just like flying through the air, like, look at me, aren't I cool? Oh my God. That would be the kind of stuff that is on
Mhm.
Luke's ship. But I just remember that when they were around the time they would be filming that episode was when I think Becky said that the set that they were at looked really cool.
Mhm.
And so there's just a lot that they could do with a set like that that's just like scary, to
Yeah.
just make it creepy and weird. And for the audience, and even though we know what it is, it's still just like an unsettling sort of feeling. Um, and then of course the other thing from that scene is the fact that in that couple second clip, Percy is running down the hallway on the Princess Andromeda. He's very clearly holding the golden fleece and he's been stabbed.
Hmm.
Like you can very clearly see that he's been stabbed like here or whatever. And I mentioned, I think last week when we did this, that Sophia sent me a picture from the graphic novel for Sea of Monsters, like probably over a year ago. That was him with like tape wrapped around in the same place on him.
Yeah.
So it is like within the canon in the books for Luke to do that, and like you can't really tell because the clip is too short to tell if he's like limping or something. Because in the book, the reason why he's crawling across the floor for a little while when he's by Luke is because he like slashes him by his ankles, and
Hmm.
so he can't like get up and like walk or run for a little bit.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of I've seen a lot of posts of people trying to figure out like what is going on in that scene where he's on the Princess Andromeda with the Golden Fleece and he's like by himself. Um, oh, thank you, thank you, Sophia. Is in the upper thigh or whatever. I knew it was something that made it where he couldn't like walk as easily anymore.
Yeah.
Um, but either way, like it's I like that people are like almost like re-remembering this of like, oh yeah, what the fuck is going on?
Yep.
But it is like it that is actually exactly what happens in the book. Like granted, minus like him having the golden fleece, but you could, at least for me, when I look at that, I'm like, it makes sense in a way of it being a TV show that they would, because this season is like a race to the end, which is camp, that they would like put it off. And it did make me remember that that one mysterious scene that was Sally that was there and everyone else that was there. The only thing that anyone could see them doing was running. And
Yeah.
like Sally was even running. And like you could people could see Daniel because he's so freaking tall,
Hmm.
running like back and forth, but you could hear the rest of them running. And so I'm like, well, like that scene put together with that, it's like when I see that couple second scene of like Percy by himself like running through the hallway with the golden fleece and he's stabbed and injured in some way and looks like he's like trying to keep going. That to me is like everyone else, he's by him. It makes me think that he's by himself
Hmm.
and that maybe Luke gets him somehow to go on the ship without anybody else. And that's him like trying to run back to where everybody else is so that they can get the golden fleece back.
Yeah.
Um, because especially the way that everyone else is running in the scene that we saw, like maybe they're like passing it around so that Luke and his people don't know which one of them has it.
Yeah.
And so that Clarice can still be the one to bring it back to camp and get away before they realize which one of them actually has the stupid thing.
Yeah.
Um, and like part of me wants Sally to be there just because she like realizes like that something's going on with Percy and just like or like Chiron calls her to like get help from her or something, knowing that they're gonna come back and something is gonna happen when they come back. But either way, just the whole idea of Percy running down the Princess Andromeda hallway while he's already been stabbed at least one time,
Yeah.
just like trying to get off the ship before somebody kills him, is definitely like kind of putting into a good picture like what is going to happen
Yeah.
in
Like
this
how high
season.
the stakes actually are.
Yeah, and just like the stuff that they get put through. Like they're not he's not 13 years old anymore, and so they can show them having like a little bit more brutal of fights
Hmm.
than than they did in season 1.
Yeah.
And also just like things have like progressed a little bit further. And when I saw that, I rewatched the interview that Walker did back in February, like right after they stopped filming. And
Hmm.
he talks about in that like the thing that he liked best about the season is that all of these things keep happening, but they're like they don't have time to like sit there and like think about it or talk about it. The way he put it was like it's not like telegraphed, which is like there isn't like a moment of like you looked like shocked at the camera to tell the audience that they should be shocked by this thing that's happening. He
Hmm.
basically said like things just like kind of my character sees things that are like really shocking, but I just have to like move on because
Yeah.
we don't have time to like think about it. He's like exactly like how that stuff happens in real life. When something happens, you just have to move on. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I like about it too. That like they just have to keep going, and they
Hmm.
don't have time. If they stop, everyone's going to die. And
Yeah.
so they don't have time to really think about anything that's actually going on or anything that happened when they're doing all this stuff until it's over.
Hmm.
And it's basically going to be everyone having a heart attack every week, and it's going to be really great. Like every episode is probably going to end in some sort of like cliffhanger sort of moment, especially because the other thing he said in that interview was that there's just like a lot more fighting,
Hmm.
and there's a lot more things just like happening where people are attacking them and stuff. And so that's likely the new character in Chris Rodriguez that are like on their tail and things like that. And like, oh,
Yeah.
another thing is Leah.
Yep.
Leah did an interview, a couple of them, but she did an interview like on a red carpet kind of interview. And they asked her about season two, of course. And the way she put it was that the new characters are crazy. She
Okay.
literally went like this, like, and she was like, they are constantly wanting to like fight people and always ready for like anything all the time. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm like, so they're like, I remember the description of Allison was that she's like super devoted, like super big devoted to the cause of Kronos and stuff. And
Yeah.
so I'm like, okay, so they're gonna be like out for blood.
Yeah.
Pretty much always like out to just like attack them at any given moment and probably not care about like what they're doing to a certain point. That's gonna be fun. Like it's gonna
Yeah.
be like scary, but it's a good kind of scary. And it also just kind of gives people like um the telegraphing stuff that happens with that, like to use Walker's word, is to like telegraph what kind of leader Luke is
Hmm.
and like what kind of group his army is. It just makes his ship scarier.
Yeah.
And like when they end up, when especially if Percy really does end up on the ship by himself at a certain point, it makes it really scary that he's on there on his own, because you just had a whole season of these people following them around everywhere they went, just trying to terrorize them as best as they possibly could. And it's like, what is he going to do when they're on that ship with all those people in one place together when they all want to kill him really badly? um, so that's fun to think about. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, Sophia's saying that she is saying it's crazy that they're acting like this in season two. Imagine what they'll be like in season four.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah, well, this is why I've always been really excited about this show, because just seeing it visually is just always a very different experience. And it's so funny. Like I was going through our old videos from Sea of Monsters the other day, and I
Hmm.
just click on one, and all I hear myself say is like, they're gonna have to make Luke sound really horrible at the end of season two to set up him like torturing Annabeth in season three. And I was like, wow, past self, you are smart. Like,
Yes.
because that is what they have to do. They have to make him be so villainous to understand like the capabilities of what he could do in
Hmm.
season three. And like I said before, especially if they add in like Chris Rodriguez getting lost in the maze and him just like leaving him in there to like rot
Yeah.
in season three, which I'm they might be doing, because one thing that was funny in is that Dior has like a side like TikTok account, and she
Hmm.
posted this video last night. And it was funny because in the middle of the video she says I'm in Vancouver, but she like edits herself by making her own little noises to cover up, but you can tell that
Hmm.
she's saying Vancouver. And she's talking about how she got there and immediately bought like 20 candles. And she's just talking, and she's like saying like, I'm gonna it's bulk up season now, and she starts talking like that.
Yep.
And I just started laughing, like hearing her try to like cover up, like I'm like, why are you doxing yourself, like, child?
Yeah.
But also it's just, if she's there, then Clarice has some sort of a role in season three, which I wanted her to be in season three, so I'm glad that she's there.
Hmm.
And so that gives me hope, at least, that they're going to include some of that stuff in season three.
Yeah, it would be really interesting for them to include some of the maze stuff or some of the labyrinth stuff early, just so that we get that picture of like Luke is that ruthless that he does not care about sending his best friend into a place that's going to drive him insane.
Yeah, Luke in season three is like, I'm gonna send my best friend into this place that I know is gonna make him lose his mind because it's easier for me to find the path to kill everybody faster if I do that to him. And then I'm gonna go back to this cave where I'm torturing Annabeth
Hmm.
and I'm like turning her against her own friends by
Yeah.
manipulating her. And then I'm gonna go like, take a nap after doing this to all the people that care about me the most.
Hmm.
God. But that's just like what he does. And like that is like his character, but it is very helpful when you literally have him like doing it on a screen, and Charlie is like really good at being scary and
Yeah.
manipulative and stuff. So that's going to be really easy for him because he did a really good job of that stuff in season 1
Yeah.
of like showing that side of Luke, I guess.
He is
It
a
will just get
Gemini
more
after
intense.
all.
Hmm?
Charlie is a Gemini after all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um yeah, and it's also really, it makes me wonder about like the whole Allison character too. Like if like they said that she was just they just had her in mind for this season so far. Like they
Hmm.
can't really answer that question because that automatically would give a lot of things away of like what happens to her, because but it does make me wonder, like, is she gonna die?
Yeah.
Or is something gonna happen to her or
Yeah,
something?
we can't really definitively say unless that does happen. Like
Mm-hmm.
if that would be the okay, her character's gone, and there's no turning back from her character is gone. But if I would say I wouldn't be surprised if let's just say her character storyline does not involve her character dying, that depending on fan reception, they may or may not like, and I know that they're currently doing the filming, but she doesn't necessarily have to be in all of Titan's Curse for her to be there.
No,
So,
and
yeah.
she could also come back in season 4
Hmm.
and 5 for that matter, but like season 3 is like this is a more interesting season when you think about every single aspect of it. When it
Yeah.
comes to like stuff with Luke, because they're doing the whole parallel in that season of Luke being like Heracles, and so they're focused on Luke screwing over his like Annabeth, who he calls his sister, and then
Hmm.
his best friend.
Yeah.
And so they're doing that whole parallel that nobody else except for us seems to ever notice is actually happening in that book.
Yeah.
And so they are focusing more on his like personal relationships in that way. And I've seen some comments online of people assuming that Allison is like a girlfriend, which I think is interesting that people are just like jumping to that, like assuming that because she's a girl, and like maybe she could be, but also I think you have to like, I think it's kind of it you're kind of like jumping to like storylines that other shows with teenagers would do by just
Yeah.
automatically assuming that she's just going to be a girlfriend. Like her description is somebody who is very disenfranchised with camp, doesn't want to be there anymore, and is like so hardcore for Kronos that she'll do whatever to help Luke. That is not someone who sounds like they're there because of any sort of, if anything, like honestly, if anything, like she could be some sort of like a test for Luke. Like
Hmm.
she could be like challenging for him because Luke's whole part of Luke's whole thing is that Kronos, like we just read it in Battle Labyrinth, he purposefully pretends like he wants Percy to do things the entire time, like
Hmm.
having the ship be a ship and be named after Princess Andromeda and other things like that to make Luke go down like that path faster by making him feel like jealous or competitive or whatever with Percy, even though Kronos never cared about Percy doing it or anything like that. He just like fed
Hmm.
into it on purpose. And so Allison could be somebody else like that, of like somebody who's, the same age as him, that's smart, that is strong, knows how to fight, went through camp too, and is
Hmm.
just as devoted to Cronus's cause as Luke, and is like pushing him to do things and just like to almost like keep up with her to be
Yeah.
like the number one, and to have him have to like try to like keep that place with Kronos, because Kronos of course is abusive and never once like them to feel comfortable with that. And it also like if they do that, it reflects well with how Luke treats everybody else because
Yes.
that's what he does to everyone else. He does the same thing to like Chris and Annabeth and anyone else, Ethan, anyone else he ever interacts with. He makes them prove everything so that they never feel comfortable with him. Like they always have to like somehow, prove themselves to him when he's just a little edgelord fuckboy. But still, like, there's a lot of that stuff. And so, if she's still alive at the end of season two,
Hmm.
her coming back in Bow the Labyrinth when, like, things are definitely going up a notch would make sense in a way, since the whole thing that season is, like, killing everybody at the end.
Hmm.
And so bringing in more of, especially since he's running around the labyrinth and stuff, she could easily be with him when he's doing that stuff in the
Yeah.
labyrinth if she's still on his team and still there and still alive. Like we'll see, you never know. Like it's the thing that Dior said was that there's a lot of like twists and turns. And
Hmm.
like the way that she said it was like people like almost change their minds or like you don't know who's on what side or who's on what team or whatever
Yeah.
as the season goes on. And she could be a part of that too. Like
Hmm.
I wondered if they had that scene that we think is Luke of him walking into the big house showing that he's like working with Tantalus, if that like is a thing that we wonder about the whole season or if they try
Yeah.
to, you know, go back and forth with that or like have or like try to have Dionysus have like a soul of some kind and like, be like spying on them the whole time for Chiron or something like that, that kind of things. We'll see.
Yeah.
There's a lot of we don't really know exactly the situations they'll get into because we don't know quite yet what the newer people are going to be doing. But they're going to be doing some stuff that's going to make us excited.
Yeah.
And a week from tomorrow is when the Comic Con panel is. And
Hmm.
so at least by then they'll put out a bunch of stuff and we'll be trying to keep up with all of it.
Yeah.
Um, what else was okay? And then the other thing I thought was just interesting to talk about just oh, hold on a second. She might be following the crew. Oh yeah, yeah. Sophia's saying that she might be following them, like the kids, and
Yeah.
that's kind of what I was afraid. That's honestly kind of what I was afraid of, just because I don't like seeing them being in even more danger. But that does like make sense,
Hmm.
and it is one of those things that like in Sea of Monsters, the book, you don't know, like they don't know what the heck Luke is doing, like why he's not doing that.
Hmm.
In the book, we don't find out until the end that Luke was just like waiting for them to bring back the golden fleece so that he didn't have to do it until Percy realizes it. There's some times in that book where like Annabeth especially wants to believe that there's still some good in him that
Hmm.
they could like save Thalia, that he was going to use the golden fleece to like save Thalia or something, even if he was going to try to get Thalia to join his side or
Yeah.
whatever. And then when you get to the end and he's like, no, I wanted to use this for Kronos the whole time. I don't care if Thalia dies. It is like a huge thing.
Hmm.
But like in this, it would make sense to have him have somebody like that following them everywhere they go. That would just like overcomplicate like absolutely everything in a way
Yeah.
it's already complicated. And so they don't need more, but they will have more. And so it's that kind of an idea. And it is like interesting of like if they have Chris go with her, like what like his dynamic would be like. I especially just think it's interesting because Clarice and Chris are a thing in later books to see if they have them interact at all.
Hmm.
And for her to be like, what the fuck is your problem, bro? And
Yeah.
like Clarice sort of way of doing that kind of thing. And like what kind of personality he will have, like how indoctrinated are you still like questioning what you're doing, is he
Hmm.
gonna like not be okay with them like just straight up murdering children that he actually knows, or is he like so far gone with Luke that he's okay with that, or what?
Yeah.
We don't know yet. And but either way, they likely will be stalking them as like the worst stalkers of all time.
Yeah.
Like they don't need monsters when they have like human beings doing it for them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, okay. So the other thing I thought it would be just like interesting to talk about was Becky was doing some like research on threads, but I thought it was an interesting thing to discuss where she was talking about, she was using the Superman movie as a way to talk about something.
Mm-hmm.
But she was basically talking about this idea that like, um,
Four quadrant was the wording. I had to look
yeah,
up what it meant. Yeah.
four quadrant basically means media essentially that is made for like every age group. And
Yes. Every
so,
demographic.
yeah. And so she was saying one of the comments we have heard, and even more recently, is that there's a loss of appetite for shows with young protagonists. And so she was asking people, like, what are some of your favorite shows or movies you have seen recently that obviously isn't Percy Jackson? And why did you like them? And when I saw that, I was like, we're helping her prove a point to Disney. I appreciate when she lets us do things like this
Yeah.
because I think it's fun. But it was like an interesting thing for her to bring up of that idea that like people don't want to watch things with like kids in them or kids as like some sort of a main character or
Mm-hmm.
whatever because that is something that has always bothered me
Yeah.
in like life is this idea that um if content or however you put that is made for children that it's like less than.
Yeah. And so, yeah, when Becky started asking about these four quadrant shows, it's funny because, like, I saw people putting Stranger Things as a example, and
Hmm.
years ago, I like had posted something about how I was freaked out that there were kids with Stranger Things merch at Williams Elementary School at like fourth grade, and like I know you haven't watched that one, but it's alien monster things that take over your body. Like you see
Hmm.
things coming out of people's mouths. You see them like physically take over people. And I know if I showed that to my 12-year-old, he would have freaking nightmares. Like even now. So I don't consider that a show for kids, even though kids are the protagonists. It's very
Yeah.
much nostalgia bait, if anything, for I would say like younger boomers, older Gen X, because of the kind of 70s, 80s vibe to it.
I think something like that happens with media in general where if there's like kids in it people
Hmm.
just automatically just assume that it's made for kids.
Hmm.
And it's like not always, not necessarily, but that
Yeah.
is something that I've just noticed overall. It's something that really annoys me in like kind of like the science fiction, like fantasy sort of like genre world. That like
Hmm.
people like look down on things if they're like if you think that they're made for kids in mind or that kids are there they like are like annoyed when kids are there to like watch like a the movie or something and
Hmm.
it's like kids are should be there and there's nothing wrong with them enjoying the things that you also enjoy and like just
Yeah.
because something is made for kids does not make it like inherently bad or not interesting or worse somehow, but like that's how people take it. Like every once in a while I get a comment from somebody being like, "Oh, all of this talk about a children's book," and I just delete them because I'm
Hmm.
like, if that's all you have to say, then you have nothing going on in your brain, and I
Yeah.
shouldn't bother interacting with you. But it's just like that kind of an idea that like people, even with Percy stuff, like they look at it and they're like, "Oh, isn't that for kids?" And it's like maybe, but also it's for quite literally anybody.
Hmm.
Like you don't have to be it's really weird because there's a lot of things that are made for like any ages and even if the like writing style of it is made so that kids will like can follow it and understand it or whatever it doesn't mean that you yourself can't like a lot
Yeah.
of anime is written like that too where
Hmm.
like there is written for like middle school-ish whatever kids or younger kids to be able to follow along the story but there's also this thing that happens where this is going to turn into a whole rant about kids, but I don't care. But like people act like kids are stupider than they are.
Yeah.
And it really really bothers me. Because
Yeah.
it's like kids are not that stupid. You act like they're stupid because you don't think that they're actual human beings. This is an overall like theme, but this is how that kind of thing like shows up in like TV and movies and books and whatever, because
Hmm.
it's like kids don't need to be talked down to. They don't need to be babied in order for them
Yes.
to understand what is going on and what they're watching. Just
Hmm.
show them. Like Percy Jackson books, like they don't like spell it out about certain things. People just pick up on it. They
Hmm.
just like pick up on like, oh, Gabe is horrible. And oh, like Sally definitely killed Gabe with Medusa's head at the end of the first book. That's the best thing I've ever seen in my life. And
Yeah.
just things like that, like you don't need Percy to sit there and be like, my mom killed Gabe with Medusa's head. And he
Yeah.
just talks about how she sold his statue in the next book and is now like using the money from that to be able to just like work on writing a book, the thing she's always wanted to do, but she's been too poor to be able to do it. Now
Hmm.
she can do that in the second book because of that. But like even with his little storyline in Titan's Curse where he knows that Sally is dating Paul, but Sally won't tell him, and he
Hmm.
just tells Sally like, I know what's going on. And he just asks her like, are you happy? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, okay, then that's all I need. Goodbye. Have
Yeah.
fun with him. You don't need to like be worried about my reaction or whatever. Even Titan, like I was thinking about this last night, Titan's Curse as a book in general never tells you like how upset you should be at these things that are happening, but
Hmm.
which is why I think it's such a good book overall, and why it's the book that made like the Percy Jackson fandom or like books like explode in popularity
Yeah.
in general. Um Rick was even talking about that when he went on a book tour for Titan's Curse, suddenly there was like all these people showing up now.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why that book was kind of that moment and the show season could be like the same sort of like explosion thing is that as you're reading the book, all these things just keep happening to Percy, but like because it's being told from his perspective, he's just like, yeah, this is just happening and it's probably my fault. And like nobody is there to like tell him like, no, you're wrong. That's wrong what's happening to you. And so when you're reading the book, you're just really upset because you read him like blaming himself about Annabeth when Thalia blames him for being kidnapped. You read him blaming himself for Bianca choosing to join the hunters when he tried to stop her. You blame him like giving Thalia like empathy and stuff and when she doesn't give him any and like takes and tells him to stop being mean to Dionysus when Dionysus is arguing that they just leave Annabeth to die.
Yeah.
And it like she electrocutes him a couple times and he is the one that gets more punished than she does. Like she still gets to go on the quest and he has to stay home. And you just like read these things of him in that book just being like, yeah, I'm tired, I'm hungry, but I can't eat because I'm not hungry, and I can't sleep because if I sleep, I'm gonna have nightmares about Annabeth being tortured by Luke. And he just like says it. He's like, I might be dead in a week anyway, so like, who cares if I'm hungry right now? And it's just like that. That's that entire book. And when you're reading it, you get so upset for him being like in these situations, and you
Yeah.
just like want to shake everybody else who's around him because nobody else seems to notice
Hmm.
that he's obviously upset and you just want it to stop. And
Yeah.
it especially culminates at the end of the book when he does all of this stuff and he holds up the sky and the first thing Annabeth says to him is don't hurt Luke.
Yeah.
And you're just like, are you kidding me? But that's what how that book is. Nobody in that book is like telling you to be upset by these things. Percy is telling you the opposite, but you're upset by them anyway. Because when kids read books like that, they can understand that.
Yeah.
They don't need you to baby them. They don't need like a GI Joe like commercial like they used to do at the end where they like make it extremely clear like what they want you to think about what they just showed. They don't need to do that. They can pick up on it because they have brains and they use them. And they're not
Hmm.
like the way that people talk about kids is like they can't possibly grasp like complicated subjects. And it's like no they can, especially if you just show it to them and don't like baby them and let them like figure it out on their own. And if they have questions, you can like answer them,
Mhm.
but like and help them along, but also like give them time to actually figure it out. Like I know this is like a whole thing, but because that's a lot of what I try to do with the videos and stuff that I make, and even the videos that we make on YouTube, especially the ones I make on TikTok, is
Mhm.
I make things. I'm not like babying the people who watch my videos. I expect them to be able to understand the things that I'm talking about, and if they don't understand what I mean and they ask questions, I'll just explain it to them. I remember back when I first started making Percy Jackson videos and got like a bunch of followers and stuff. I made a video talking about how in Heroes of Olympus, that Jason doesn't realize that Percy is suicidal
Mhm.
and tries to, in like a Percy sort of way, in House of Hades, I think that happens in.
Yeah.
And anyway, and somebody who was like a kid was like watching that video and they were like, "Can you explain what you mean when you say that?" And then I made a video like explaining why that scene is him being suicidal and him trying to, and Jason not seeing it because he just doesn't realize that Percy has feelings in that way. He looks at him more as like a hero that wouldn't have feelings.
Yeah.
And so I just explained it to them, and people in there were like, understood what I meant once I like understood things that they didn't pick up on. Sure, that's
Yeah.
fine, but it's so frustrating how people do that with like kids media. They
Mhm.
so many people were like when they won all of their Emmys. I saw
Yeah.
some people being like, "Oh, well, it's just a children's Emmy," and I'm like, "I will take their children's Emmy and shove it up your ass." Like,
Yep.
you have never won a children's Emmy in your life. You will never be part of a production that could win 8 of them in the first season that it's on. It
Mhm.
does not make their Emmys win less than just
Mhm.
because it's not in the adult version of an Emmy. It's an fucking Emmy. There
Yeah.
are thousands of TV shows that are written and scripted for children, put out every single year. And this TV show won 8 awards. They won half of the awards they were nominated for, and they won by far
Mhm.
more awards than any other production, like Heartstopper and One Piece and and like big things like Avatar: The Last Airbender. They were nominated for less awards and won less of them than we did. And
Yeah.
like it doesn't matter if it's for children, it's still a huge deal to win Emmys at all. And it just is crappy to like lower it to be like, well, it's not in like the adult world, so it doesn't mean anything. And it's like that doesn't legitimately does not matter. Um,
Yeah.
this is something that comes up a lot when people talk about Star Wars,
Mhm.
because one of the things that George Lucas said when he originally was talking about Star Wars was like Star Wars was written for children. And so whenever people complain too much about Star Wars not being death and gory and bloody and disgusting
Mhm.
and all the kind of things that they and like to be fair, I would love if Star Wars did like a horror movie. That would be actually really fun. And because it
Mhm.
could be absolutely terrifying. There's so many
Yeah.
things in it that could be absolutely terrifying. That would be really fun. But also, it was originally meant to be like a all ages sort of thing, and that is something that they always keep in mind when they at least make like the big movies, is that they want kids to be able to go to these movies and enjoy them. So they're not going to go like all grim and dark and depressing like people for whatever reason want them to do. They're gonna and like that became like a whole thing when like Jar Jar Binks was around, who was a
Yeah.
character that
I
was
don't get the Jar Jar
obviously,
Binks hate.
yeah, it was obviously written for kids, but like so when Becky asked this question, the thing I said to her, I was like, I wonder if people's dislike of children is like affecting the media that they watch.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about.
And she said like maybe, and I was like, yeah, I feel like it is. And it I was 14 when The Phantom Menace came out, and I saw
Mhm.
people not only be horrible about Jar Jar Binks as a character and Anakin as a character, but then harass Jake Lloyd so much that he still is just like gone from like the internet because of how
Yeah.
badly he was harassed as a 9-year-old child.
Yeah.
And then also the actor who played Jar Jar Binks tried to die because of how much harassment he personally got. Like
Yeah.
people like he based the voice of Jar Jar Binks Ahmed Best is his name, and Star Wars has brought him back, and has had parts in, I think, The Mandalorian. I think
Hmm.
The Mandalorian. They had him come on as like a as somebody. He's either way. He's involved in many productions now. Um, and he goes to conventions and everybody gives him lots of hugs and stuff, so he knows that we are sorry for what happened to him. But he talked about how like the voice that Jar Jar Binks talks in, he is Jamaican, and he
Hmm.
based that off of family members of his and how they talk.
I
And
can
like
see that. Yeah.
the Jamaican, I forget the name of the language, but there is a language that is just for like Jamaican people, that is like their own language that they made up like themselves. Like
Hmm.
I went to Jamaica once on a cruise and everybody talks in that language. Sometimes every once in a while I'll be scrolling on TikTok and I'll see somebody talking in that language whose family is Jamaican. And so it has like a slightly different accent than like how they would normally speak like English. And so that is when you know that, it's like, yeah, that is what Jar Jar Binks sounds like. And so he was like, I'm taking these people from my family that I love, and like putting them into this character, and everybody was like especially like really cruel about that aspect. And it's like this is something really personal to him, and nobody cared or even like
Yeah.
waited to find out. And really at the core of why people hated Jar Jar Binks so much, that they like wrote off the prequel trilogy as a whole just because of that one character, is because they hate children.
Yes.
Because he was clearly for children. They despise the fact that Anakin was a child. I
Hmm.
remember I was 14 when that movie came out. I remember seeing so many people so upset that Anakin was a child. They thought, they were so mad that Anakin was 9 years old and this
Hmm.
little kid in the first movie, that they just wanted to get over the first movie so
Yeah.
they could get to the second one when he was older. And it's like, what is like, I genuinely don't understand what is wrong with people and how
Yeah.
they talk about children.
Well, and then even in the second movie, I mean, even Hayden Christensen got shit for a while for being like moody lover boy in the second
Hmm.
movie, and
Hmm.
even a little bit in the third movie. But like having just watched one and two with William, he liked one. He liked Phantom Menace because of like pod racing, because the character was
Hmm.
closer to his age. And honestly, like I do think he says that he's a Lord of the Rings guy, that he's not going to be a Star Wars guy, but I think once I show him the original, like 4, 5, and 6, that's where he's going to fall in love with the series.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, like, but yeah, another thing is I feel like people have been hating on the child aspects of Star Wars since 4, 5, and 6 because I know you haven't watched How I Met Your Mother either. There's a joke in it because they're like the guys are kind of Star Wars bros in it. And one of the girls that like Ted dates during it, he finds out she hasn't watched Star Wars, and it's a really big deal to him because he watches the series like once a year. He'll like go
Hmm.
through all of the series and do a marathon with his friends. And so he like makes her watch it, and they were talking during that series about, or during that like episode about how it's make or break how people feel about the Ewoks to them.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and like, well, if you saw it when you were a kid, you like the Ewoks because you think they're teddy bears, but if you saw it when you were older, you hate them, which is the right choice. And I was just like, okay, but the Ewoks are kind of cute. Like, I know I
Yeah.
saw it when I was a kid, but still, there's nothing wrong with being like, oh, these fuzzy little teddy bear warriors that braid Leia's hair. I like, it's, there's nothing wrong with it.
No, they're just sweet. And like
Hmm.
um Yoda is even like that.
Yeah,
In the
yeah.
original movie, before you know that he's Yoda, I'm sure there are a lot of people that didn't like him at all before he reveals who he really is
Hmm.
in Empire Strikes Back. There's like things like that in like the droids. Like everybody loves the droids. Everyone loves
Yeah.
R2D2 at least. R2D2 is there for kids,
Yeah,
for
and
like
him
his
and
little
3PO
noises
are
he
comic
makes.
relief.
Yeah, and you need things like that. Like to compare that kind of stuff to another thing that you just brought up, Lord of the Rings. Like
Hmm.
Merry and Pippin are like that.
Yeah.
In Lord of the Rings, like them, like Pippin making in the first movie, like Pippin making all the jokes about like when second breakfast and lunch and dinner and when
Yeah.
are we going to eat again, and them like just and Pippin just like doing things wrong and like making people upset because he's not following the rules, and him and Mary playing their little pranks, and that's
Yeah.
that is why at the end of the first movie they like them being kidnapped is such a big thing, because they're like the innocent sweet ones, like when Aragorn runs up to Boromir says like they took the little ones,
Mhm.
and Aragorn knows exactly who he means. Like he means them because they're the most like childlike, kind of like more innocent, even though they're like, you know, the party animal ones, they're still like more innocent in that way than
Yeah.
everyone else and what everyone else is like kind of dealing with in that movie. And so like they show Pippin just like full on like sobbing after they think that Gandalf is dead.
Yeah.
Um because that's like the character, that's like the role that those two characters play of throughout the entire movies. Like in Return of the King, one of the I think the first thing in that movie that made me cry the first time I watched it was when the two of them have to separate.
Mhm.
And then when Pippin finds Merry on like the battlefield when it looks like he's gonna die, and he starts like crying and telling him that he's gonna be okay, and like helps like nurse him back to health and things like that. Like
Yeah.
those are big moments because those are like the ones you look at as the most like innocent, fun loving, like childlike characters, and they're being forced to go out and fight too. And it
Yeah.
just like feels wrong that they have to do this, and they have to do this like separately, that they can't do it together. um
Yeah.
and things like that. Oh my god. Sorry.
Yeah. It's okay.
So Sophia said that she went to a screening of episode 1, and she says like my brain swears Lucas showed up too. And I mean he did they did show up to ones when those movies were coming out originally. But either way, it's just the idea that like there's this idea people have that if there's like children in a movie, or if it
Mhm.
is about children or children could see it, that it's like somehow the value of it has been lowered.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, like, before this TV show was made about Percy, I used to talk about it the way that I did. And Avatar The Last Airbender is another version of that,
Mhm.
where, like, people are like, I see so many, like, bros, like 20, whatever age bros is what I call them. I'll see TikTok sometimes to, um, who will talk about how, like, they'll watch Avatar and they'll be, like, surprised about how good it is. Or
Mhm.
when they watched like season 1 of Percy Jackson, they were like surprised about how good it is, and they were surprised by like the scenes where monsters were attacking these like little children, and how upset they were watching this happen, and how they realized how wrong it was that
Mhm.
they were like left to deal with this stuff. And it's like, why would you think that these shows aren't that good? It's purely just because they're made for children.
Yeah.
And so you think that they're somehow less than. Like, are you joking
Yeah.
with these? Like, Avatar The Last Airbender and Percy have some of the like the best when it comes to the best storylines
Mhm.
and story arcs for pretty much everybody who's a main character involved. Like
Yeah.
everybody, like the part of the reason why those two are so like beloved by people
Mhm.
is that every main character has like a set kind of story that they go through each. And it's very similar to when I think about Lord of the Rings, because the reason why I love Lord of the Rings is that every member of the fellowship is important.
Mhm.
Every single member has their own story arc that they're going through at the same
Yeah.
time. It's not all about one person, it's about all of them together, and they all have their moments. And that's why those movies are so good, is that every single character has like their moment, and
Yeah.
especially in the last movie. And so you get so invested in them from the first movie on, because you see all of them trying to do this thing and you just want them to succeed. And like Avatar is the same way. Like every main character has a big story arc that is like complicated. It's not easy. Like people talk a lot about Zuko's arc because it's a really well done arc of somebody who starts off more like a villain
Mhm.
and then realizes like I don't actually want to do this, and figures out a way to like not be a villain anymore, and ends up like helping all of them. And it is a really satisfying way of doing that, because usually they're not done that well at all when
Mhm.
productions try to do things like that. But everybody has an arc like that in Avatar. Like Sokka does too. Like, and
Yeah.
Like everybody does, which is why like people rip apart the new Netflix original that they just started, because it's already lacking a lot of those things for those characters in the first season when that wasn't lacking on the show, and so it's a huge like gap. And in the same way, like Percy is like that, where like all the main characters have their own like story that they're going on. And this show is like wanting to add more of Clarice, so she has more of a story like that too. But at least Annabeth and Grover and Percy and Luke, they all have like a very set story that they're going on in the books that are being reflected so far on the show, and they're very complicated. They're not like easy things for any of them to figure out or deal with. And the only reason that anyone would look at any of these sort of productions, and I know I'm not remembering some too, that are like seen as like for kids, but most of the time people don't look at those as like not that good, or like, or they want to like age them up, or they want them to be like animated or something, which is like basically
Yeah.
coded that you just want it to be animated because you picture animated things to be meant for children. And because that's a lot of that stuff too, is people assume animated things are less than because they think only kids watch things like that. That's just stupid.
Yeah.
But either way, it's just that this idea that like because it's meant for kids is not that good. Like we talked a lot about Rick Riordan and why like classics people don't like him, but there is a part of it that honestly think that at least some of them don't like him because he makes it accessible to children.
Yeah.
And so they think like, oh, that's easy. That's an easy thing to do, right? Like that one classics girl that is our like born enemy, even though she doesn't know who we are except for me when she yelled at me, is like she, I'm sure, thinks like the way that she talked about Rick Riordan was like, oh, he chooses myths that are like the fun, exciting ones because they're more fun to watch. And it's like he chooses the myths he does because he wants to teach kids about things, and those myths are the easiest way to make them understand. Like when you look back at like the even like the book The Lightning Thief, the way that they use like Medusa's head like gives away like how he always kind of saw Medusa. And after they made the TV show, it's obviously it was way more easy to see it, but still like he sends Medusa's heads to the gods as a way to show them like, I don't like you, I don't respect you, I'm
Yep.
impertinent, I'm never going to follow your rules, so go fuck yourself. That's basically what he does when he sends them Medusa's head. Like he sends
Yeah.
his dad the head of the person that he thinks his dad sexually assaulted and is just like, here you go. And the gods like send it back to him because they're petty. And his mom uses it to kill Gabe, and that's what they used to then like have an easier life from that moment on, at least when it comes to being so poor. But like using her head as a way to like free them from being stuck in an abusive relationship, after also using it as a way to show the gods that we don't respect you, and I'm like asserting myself to you guys that you can't use me the way that you're trying to right now.
Yeah.
That's like showing how he understands actually Medusa's myth that other classics say isn't a real myth. But it's just like that stuff is not easy. Like writing something for kids does not inherently make it easier. Like, and the way that they talk about it is like they think that Rick Riordan making things accessible to children means that he's like stupid or he's not
Yeah.
as smart as they are, because they can like sit in a room and like read books from long ago and like argue about the most pedantic stuff that does not matter. But it's like you don't actually know how to apply any of the things that you actually learn to anything, because it's very easy to like read books about something you're interested in and like only talk to people who agree with you, essentially, even if they don't agree with everything you write papers on and things like that in dissertations or whatever. They all are basically there just like, in this like closed group. No one's really gonna like upset the way that they think about things all too much, because they all are. You don't get to like that level of schooling unless you're all like kind of drinking the Kool-Aid in a way about how they all think about the myths and what is good and what is bad and how to talk about this stuff and things like that. And so like Rick Riordan being somebody who's just like making these stories accessible to kids by like teaching them in a way that maybe those people wouldn't like, it's very easy for them to just like feel like they know what they're talking about when the only people they talk to are people who also had the same schooling as them and generally agree with them about something. It's when they open themselves up to the internet and suddenly people like us pop up that are like, oh, I know what you're talking about, but I completely disagree on every single thing you just said. And here is an example with like citations from the original text to explain why we disagree with every single thing you said. They generally don't know what to do. Like that one girl I'm referencing, she made a 9-minute video about me saying that I was basically saying that I was mean and rude to somebody, which I wasn't, but either way, she blocked me before she posted it. Like she doesn't even have like the wherewithal to try to like have a discussion with me, because instead she'll block me, make a long video about me, and then some of her followers will come over and leave rude comments on my video, making it obvious that she must have made a video about me. So I go to her page to see what the heck she said about me. But it's like, if you are going to make that long of a video and be so sure that you're right about it, but you're going to block the person, you're like counteracting.
Yeah.
And be like, oh, I can't stitch this video, so I'm just going to... You could stitch it.
I was going to call her out on that when you were done talking, because that was the most bullshit part. Like, I barely could even stand watching it after that, because I was like, oh, you're going to play facetious, and you can't stitch her, and you're going to pretend like she blocked you. No, that's not what happened, girly.
No, I did delete some of her comments on one of the videos she was leaving comments on, because she wasn't listening to anything I was saying. Like, if we're having a conversation, but all you're really doing is every time I respond to something, you don't acknowledge anything I'm saying, that's not a real conversation. I'm not going to, like, waste time doing that with somebody who's not actually, like, listening to me or, like, treating me like I'm saying anything that's, like, worth thinking about. Yeah. So I did delete some of her comments, and she talked about that as if I was like admitting defeat or something. I was like, no, I just don't want to read you being idiotic more than I have to on my own videos. I don't want to do that. And I don't have to, because this is my own video. And so I can delete your comments if I don't want to see you just over and over again, completely miss the point. And so like either way, like that whole situation was that person goes out there and basically just like uses what she knows to tell other people that they're wrong. And if somebody like points out that there are things that she's missing, she just does not acknowledge it. Because I've seen her do it at least one other time to somebody else when they made valid points too, and she also never acknowledged it at all. And so it's like, it's very easy to feel like you're right about classics if the only people you talk to are people that generally agree with what you say. Exactly. When you're somebody like Rick Riordan and you're teaching people that don't know anything and don't have any reason to know anything about Greek mythology, whether because they're kids or they're adults who just don't care or whatever, or somewhere in the middle of those two things, it's a lot harder to get them to care. Yeah. But he gets everybody to care. Like, everybody cares so much about these different, like, mythological, not only the mythological beings, but also just, like, the characters in and of themselves. He makes people care so much about them. And that's, like, a actual skill. Exactly. That's not easy. That's not at all easy to do. That's something that he's good at. Like, he's good at doing that, but that's not something that's, like, easy for most people to do. Yeah. And it's just really frustrating how that seems to happen with kids. Kids are like the most kids are the most disenfranchised people in the world. Yes. They don't have any rights. They don't have anybody helping them most of the time. Every place around the world is built on them not getting anything that they actually need or getting any help or anything like that. Most people talk about them as if they are demons. Most people talk about them as if they don't have any feelings. Yeah. They just expect them to just do things that no adult would ever put up with. But they just expect kids to for some reason. And if they get upset by that, they act like they are the worst people in the entire world. Like, I don't understand why people think that it's a bad thing that there's like a kid in a movie, or that a movie could be accessible to children too, or that kids, like the way that people talk about it, it's like they don't acknowledge that kids are going through a lot. And that's really the thing that really comes down to it, is that even if you have like a good childhood. Like you have like good parents and you have like a good support system and things like that to get through life. Like it is still hard. It's hard growing up. Like you're constantly
Yeah.
going through stuff. A lot of the time you don't really understand why, and also like people a lot of the time don't take the time to explain to you why.
Hmm.
Um or just like talk to you like you're somebody who a lot of times they're just like that's just how it is and that's it. And you're just sit there always wondering like but why, or like but like can't you tell me, like if it was any other person but a child you would explain that to them more so they would understand what's going on. Like I always tell this little story about my 2-year-old niece, but when we were at like a hotel for her birthday, there was this little kid that fell over crying, and she was asked. When we were walking away from that kid, when his parents was taking care of it, she asked me a little bit later, like, "Was that kid okay?" Like in 2-year-old speak, she was asking, like, "Is he okay? Is he okay?" And I was explaining to her, like, "Yeah, he's okay. He just got upset, like you got upset earlier, but he's gonna be okay. His mom was gonna help him," and she was like, "He's okay, right?" And
Hmm.
was just like asking that stuff, and I just talked to her like I would at like age appropriately, but
Yeah.
still. And like that's a lot of how overall like my family talks to her is like when we have to leave, we tell
Hmm.
her like we have to go home and things like that, and she understands now like that kind of stuff, that we have to leave sometimes. And so she always asks us to give her lots of hugs and stuff, obviously,
Oh.
but she understands the concept that like we have to go home now, and or that she has to go home now, and like she doesn't sit there and like throw kind of stereotypical toddler temper tantrums when that stuff happens, because we're talking to her. And when she asks a question like I'll see you again, or that kind of stuff, we say like, yeah, of course we'll see you again, we'll see you again really soon.
Yeah.
And things like that, she understands, instead of just being like okay bye, or
Yeah.
whatever. And it's like if you just talk to kids like they're a person, they'll like really like you.
Yeah, like this is something that people get wrong. The gentle parenting doesn't work for my kids crowd. And it is that age appropriate expectations. You can't expect your kids to be perfect. And I know I like when I had to repeat over and over to myself, even in those moments of frustration, I'm not trying to raise a robot who obeys my every command. I'm trying to raise a human being who can think for himself and come to the
Hmm.
right conclusion because it's the right conclusion, not because someone told him to. And like I still do that a lot, where I'll explain things to him and then say like, "What do you think about this?" And like right now, because he does hear things about politics here and there, this
Hmm.
kid is like, "Why is there not a child running this country? I feel like we could do just as good, if not better." Like,
Yep.
yeah, but like I've had to deal with that as a parent a lot. Like knowing my kid is advanced, we can look at academically, but like knowing that he is kind of a smarter, more well-behaved kid, still having people have that like kid's mindset with him until they actually talk to him, and then they'll just act like he's one of the good ones. And I'm like, no, all of them are one of the good ones if you take the time to actually get to know them and don't
Yeah.
just hate children as a concept.
Yeah, like there's this weird like genre of, I don't even know what to call it. There's weird genre of videos on TikTok recently that are
Hmm.
parents that are making videos about their children, talking about them as if they are a sociopath. And like
Yeah.
the word sociopath is not something that should ever be used by anyone ever. By the
Hmm.
way, nobody in like mental health uses that word anymore because it's an extremely stigmatized word meant to dehumanize people. It's called
Yes.
antisocial personality disorder. They're not like born like missing something, but a lot of those people make videos like that talking about their kids as if they are like demonic, and they that there's something just like wrong with them,
Hmm.
and that they're like these people that are suffering because they've been like saddled in life with this kid that is like horrible to them and won't listen to them. And every single time I see one of those videos, I usually end up eventually blocking the person after I've watched their content long enough to feel like I figure out who they are. And
Hmm.
I'm always sitting there watching them like, why are you making videos about your child like this? Why are you telling
Yeah.
the internet about them like this? And the main thing I always think over and over again is like, what did you do to them? Like, what did you do to
Yeah.
your child? Like, can you tell me what you did to them? And I just basically like watch their video long enough to find out what they did to them. And I'm like, oh, okay, there it is. Like they eventually get to it. They usually talk about it in a way that makes them still like the victim of it somehow, and like the kid like the bad one. But they eventually do say it, and I'm like, well, that's what it is. Like every single one of those videos, they'll all always offhand mention, oh yeah, they were abused a lot when they were like a little kid, and it's like, oh, okay. Is it
Yeah, who
maybe the
abused
fact that
them?
you've been like stigmatizing them and dehumanizing them and wanting to shove all these labels onto them since they were a little kid because they were traumatized and abused, that maybe that's why they hate you so much and that's why they don't want to be around you and why they just try to get away from you every time they're around you because they can't stand it? Is it maybe that and the fact that you're sharing all of this with strangers on the internet, and so nothing that they can do will ever stop anyone from knowing every single thing they're ever going through at any given time? Is it maybe some, like, would you like that? Like, would you like your kid getting on the internet every single day and making videos about how, what a shitty mom you are, and detailing every single aspect of your life and telling the entire internet about every time you and your husband got in a fight, or all the stupid things that happen at your job, or all the times that you messed something up in your life and told everyone about it, so there's no way for no one not to know what was going on in every single aspect of your life? And then act like he's surprised or upset that you wouldn't like that? Like, is that like what are you doing? But that is generally like how people treat children. Like we talk about
Yeah.
like child actors a lot, and like that is just like the best example in like Hollywood, that people expect child actors to just deal with what they deal with and shut up about it. They
Hmm.
just generally expect them to just put up with things that nobody else would ever want to do.
Yeah.
And they just expect them to do it and to just say nothing and to not like complain and to just like keep working these crazy long hours where they get paid 15% of what they're actually making and the rest goes to their parents, that they have
Yeah.
no like legal like qualifications for. Like their parents could steal all 85% of their money until they're 18, and there's nothing legally that they could do about that as long as they save the 15% from them. There's nothing else that they could do about that after they're 18. Like they're the ones working, but somehow everyone else is making money off of them while they're working really hard. And they're usually the ones that ends up having to like redo their entire life when they're an adult, and like try to figure out who they are after spending their whole childhood like doing all these things for other people. Like that's just overall like what happens to kids in general. Like they
Yeah.
just don't have any, people just don't give them a chance to be a real person, and then they act like they're out of line for not acting like an adult. And it's like you don't act like an adult.
Yeah.
Like I talk to people all the time that are like, the kids who watch our videos are very like intelligent and smart and just understand what they're talking about. And most of the people who leave comments that I really like are mostly like teenagers.
Hmm.
And people talk about teenagers as if they're like the most evil beings that walk this planet. And they're not most of the time. And even ones that are like acting out or whatever, there's always a reason why they're doing it. And
Exactly.
like if you would just listen to them, they would like, you would get to like the root of whatever it is. And so it would actually be more helpful if you would. They're not just like these evil beings that are just like doing this stuff because they want attention or they don't care or they're just kids. There's always a reason for why they're doing everything, just like everybody else.
Hmm.
But like nobody talks about them that way. And it's just, I just always get so upset about that. And it's like
Yeah.
wild to think that somebody has been telling Rick and Becky Riordan that like, oh, people don't want to watch things with kids as a lead. I'm like, is that, are you actually like trying to argue against them making something because you think that they wouldn't want to watch it? You have to be actually delusional.
Yeah.
Whatever that was for, like whatever they were, why she was posting that, that's why she was posting it, was to have like examples
Yeah.
from people who think the same way, the general same way that they do, about why obviously people want to watch things with kids in it. That's not the problem, like at all. In Hollywood, the problem is not that people don't like kids. And maybe some people don't like kids, but majority of the problem is just that Hollywood doesn't make things that are well written anymore most of the time.
Pretty much. Like
And
they're
like,
just redoing like live action movies of things that people grew up on. It's all nostalgia bait. It's just trying to book off of audiences that are already there
hmm
instead of taking risks.
hmm you got to let them do like try new things
Hmm.
and do something different and take risks and not do like this simple easy stuff. That's the stuff that people always end up liking the most. And if they
Hmm.
would just like let them do that, people will enjoy it. It's guaranteed that they will. And even if some people don't, who cares if
Yeah.
other people do? But it's just I don't even know what to say about how people talk about kids. It's just always so frustrating to me. As I just always remember being a kid and just being like, I know that I'm smarter than everybody that's here.
Such an
And
Aquarius mindset.
yeah, and nobody is going to listen to me. And like it sounds like arrogant or whatever maybe, but every like since I was a kid that just keeps getting like proven correctly over and over and over and over and over again, that I just sit there and I just think in my head like this is going to end like this or this is going to end like that or something like this or
Hmm.
that is going to happen. And sometimes I tell people what I think and sometimes I don't at all. And then when it does happen, then I pop up and be like, yeah, that's exactly what I thought would happen, but I know that nobody's going to listen to me
Yeah.
for one reason or another. And they just generally don't. And like I know we talked about this like during the election times, but to me the hardest thing about this past election is that like the people that are going to be affected the most by whatever happens are the kids that could not vote.
Hmm.
And they could not vote. Like it does not matter like who they may have like wanted to vote for, they can't vote no matter what. And no matter what's going on, they're the ones whose lives is going to be affected the absolute most. The same way that when I was 15 in 2000, I couldn't vote, and Bush become president definitely destroyed my life and like my generation's life more than anyone else's. Like I
Yeah.
was the age that I was 21, and if I would have finished college, I would have been graduating that year from college when the economy collapsed. And so
Oh
that was
yeah.
like my age was like literally when we were supposed to graduate college, which they all told us to go to college and that the only way to get a job was to go to college and get a degree. We all went to college and got a degree, and then as soon as we graduated, the entire economy collapsed. We couldn't get a job anymore anywhere even though we had a degree, and we couldn't pay any of our student loans, and we haven't been able to ever since then. And so
Yeah.
it's like we did everything that you said, and then as soon as we got to the age that we could actually apply any of that, it all was destroyed and it didn't matter anymore. And we had to like completely rewrite everything that we've been told our whole lives because you all destroyed everything for us.
Yeah.
And so it's like that kind of thing is what's going to happen with these kids, which is why I think most of the time right now people who care about kids are having like a really hard time
Yeah.
because we know how much this is affecting all of them, and there's nothing that we can do about stopping it from getting worse. Like we just try to like hang on
Yeah.
basically and just hope that it doesn't go like really bad, but we also don't know what that really means anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, the I guess that's that whole thing that I do recommend reading the comments and stuff that Becky was responding to with everybody who was responding to her about that, because it's just interesting to think about like the different things that people brought up, the different ways that media can be made that is meant for everybody. The
Hmm.
thing that I said to her during that was essentially like millennials are the one generation that we want like our inner child to be taken care of. And she basically said like, yeah, that's something that I advocate for a lot. And I'm like, yeah, I know that you do that, because that's like their entire thing. But that is very true that like millennials especially, we didn't really get, a lot of us didn't really get like a real childhood for one reason or another, and we're actually a generation that's like acknowledging that fact instead of just trying to pretend like that never happened.
Hmm.
And so that's why a lot of us like nostalgia-y things or like things meant for kids. Like a lot of us like not only Percy Jackson, but like other things like that, like Avatar the
Yeah.
Last Airbender or like anime or just like things that maybe are like more childlike or whatever. So that's why we don't care about that stuff or people when people are like, oh, shouldn't you be over this? And it's like, no, I never got to like enjoy this kind of stuff when I was younger. I'm going to enjoy it now that I'm an adult, and
Yeah.
nobody can tell me that I'm not allowed to enjoy this right now. Like my dad used to tell me that I had to stop enjoying literally anything that I ever enjoyed. He's dead now. Like he can't stop me from doing this podcast 2 times a week. He would really be trying. He would be trying to if he was alive. I never would have even done it if he was still alive. But like he would have tried. He would have found some way to like ruin everything that I enjoyed, like he did when he was alive and could talk. And so like that's what we want. We want things that are like on that. We don't want like super serious stuff all the time because our life is serious. Our life is
Yeah.
really serious. We want something that like gives us hope back. And that's usually things involving children because children are usually pretty hopeful beings. So that's always a plus. But
Yeah.
okay, the last thing I had the idea of talking about was like because we've talked about adaptation so much.
Yes.
And we've talked about it a bunch of times, but we've never just kind of like listed things off of like I don't even like necessarily using the word good versus bad, but for the sake of like a YouTube video, I suppose is like the best way to depict it of like what makes
Yeah.
a good adaptation, what makes like a bad adaptation. And because people like throw those words around a lot, and there's like certain things that I think people just generally don't understand about certain things. And so I came up with some ideas, and we'll see like if you think of any from what I said.
Yeah.
But the first thing I thought of what makes a good adaptation is a firm understanding of the original, whatever it is,
Yes.
overall message or point. And like this is somewhere like just starting off, they are destroyed because
Yeah.
they don't understand that. Like the best example
Yeah.
for Percy Jackson related is the movies.
Mm-hmm.
They don't
Yes.
understand a single goddamn thing in of the original books and what the point of them was, what the point of any of it was, the characterization involved. It's literally just like an ugly thing it's like a ghost mutated zombie version of Percy Jackson like in front of you. Like I'm sorry, Logan Lerman, but
Mm-hmm.
it is like it just doesn't like they play the characters by name and that's the only thing that they have in common with the actual characters because they're nothing
Yes.
like them because it generally doesn't understand anything that Rick was trying to do. The people who made those movies didn't want to.
Yeah. They
um,
didn't care about it.
no, they didn't care about any of that at all. They just kind of wanted to do, they used a named thing that had like brand names and like attention from an audience to make what they actually wanted to make.
Yeah.
Um, I'm pretty sure I read an article somewhere when we were watching those last year that the people who made the movie had like another idea for a movie, but they couldn't get that movie made, and so they basically just made this one, but then just like made their own script basically, just use like the characters of from this thing to make it because they could get like the money to make it since Percy Jackson was a popular book series.
Yeah.
And that like makes sense for how wild those movies are.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so it's just the overall idea that like that is what gets really interesting. I'll say
Yes.
so far in like other adaptations sometimes like one adaptation that a lot of people were recently talking about was the Lilo and Stitch live action
Yes. Yeah.
that like fundamentally misunderstood the message or point was about like keeping families together, and in that movie they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so that fundamentally it doesn't matter if you're like, oh well, they wrote it as a way of like they'll get back together later on down the road or whatever. It doesn't matter. Like the
Yeah.
overall story message of that movie was about like this kind of unorthodox family in a way, like going through hard times but finding ways to like stay together and
Yeah.
making it through that time. And so just the overall idea of presenting the idea that like one sister had to like go off on her own in order to like figure out who she was or like become like the person that she needed to be for her younger sister is just fundamentally against the overall story of what the original Lilo and Stitch was trying to say.
Exactly.
about family and sticking together even when you're different than what people imagine you to be. That it
Yeah.
didn't matter like any of the reasons. It's like if you even bring that up as like an option, then you don't understand these movies. You don't understand what's actually going on in any of them. And so it doesn't
Yeah.
matter like
Yeah,
what else
and
you say.
I mean, you can understand the source material and still get it wrong. I will say
Yeah.
that Madeline Miller is a great example. I will never get over the fact that her Achilles isn't angry enough. And she didn't really even give us an explanation for why the poets later call his wrath so powerful that it's a wrath word only ever used for like gods.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's kind of like an interesting thing where it was like, yeah, I understand the source material, but I have a purpose that is more important to me than the source material. That's something, and a certain musical that we don't have to get too into.
No, I was gonna say
Yeah.
that because I was gonna say like that the whole thing of like understanding of the original overall message.
Hmm.
There are people out there that like fundamentally misunderstand what a lot of pieces of media are like really trying to say in
Hmm.
general. Like I remember when the May the 5th be with you, or May the 4th be with you. Both of those days are Star Wars days for Star Wars fans, but when that day happened a couple months ago, there was this tweet that was going around of somebody who, like, in their 40s to 50s, was just now realizing that the original Star Wars movie was about the Vietnam War. And
Hmm.
they did not believe when people were trying to tell them that, where people had to, like, show them, like, clips of George Lucas quite literally saying that in order for them to believe it. And they're like, well, if it's about the Vietnam War, then wouldn't the US be the empire? And it's like, yeah, we are the empire. It's
You
like,
just now realizing this,
yes,
friend?
and it was
Yeah.
somebody just now realizing that. And I know that happens a lot where like there are people who watch like the Marvel movies and they really liked Hydra, who is
Oh,
literal Nazis. Like,
Jesus.
not exaggerating, quite literally are Nazis in those movies, and they just liked Hydra for whatever reason or whatever, and they just fundamentally don't understand like what these things are actually trying to tell you.
Yeah.
And Epic Musical is another example of that, where like there's certain things that like surface level wise, like you could say make sense in a way for like the different characters or
Hmm.
story or whatever. But when you think about it for a little bit, it like kind of all like doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah.
And you're just like, if you're just like wanting to go into that to enjoy like a fun like action hero adventure movie, then you're gonna enjoy it. But if
Hmm.
you know anything, or if you think about anything with like, or look up anything, even just like a Wikipedia about
Yeah.
like the Odyssey, and then you think about how in like Epic that Odysseus was able to beat up Poseidon, and the other things that are in the musical, it just like does it. You're just like, what? Like that
Yeah.
doesn't like really make sense anymore. And overall, like the like message behind it, one of the things that we tried to say back then, we can say more safely now, is that like I don't know what the message of Epic the Musical is.
Yeah.
I used to say that to people when they were like harassing us back then, of like what is the point? Like, not in a way of like this has no point, but like genuinely, like, what is the point? What
Yeah.
is like the message? What is he trying to say with this musical? Like, what are you supposed to be feeling right now? Like, the best you can get is that after you do a lot of really horrific things, your wife might forgive you anyway. And in the end, but I'm not sure that's like actually a good message to um, say.
Yeah.
That like if you do horrible things, if you say that you're sorry at the end, your wife, people who love you will just like forgive you for all of those bad things that you've done, because the things that he did in that musical were like over the top, where I
Hmm.
don't think that they should have forgiven him so easily. Because
Yeah.
like just because you love someone doesn't mean that they get to do all the things that he did without like some sort of explanation,
Yeah.
or like just him having to deal with like the responsibility of everything that he did to all these other people and beings and whatever. Yeah, it's just like that doesn't really happen. And so I honestly don't know. Like I don't mean to be mean, but I really don't, I don't know. Like when I was listening to it, I was like, I don't
Yeah.
know what the overall like kind of point or message or whatever that he was trying to say
Yeah.
was.
If I'm trying to make like a genuine attempt at it, a genuine attempt at what he probably was making the message be is that like he was trying to make it about Odysseus and Penelope's love being so strong that Odysseus would do literally anything to get back to her, which isn't necessarily false, right? It's not necessarily false from what we know, but at the same time, it's like him being thwarted the ways that he was in Epic versus the way that he was in the Odyssey literally makes him the villain on purpose. You know, you have
Mm-hmm.
that Ruthlessness song, which actually was a banger, okay? It was one of my
Mm-hmm.
favorite songs out of all the ones we listened to, but at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, I don't think that's necessarily Odysseus's angle. It's more of what Madeline says. I want to say Madeline actually does have a good grasp on Odysseus in both of those works, in both Song of Achilles and in Circe,
Mm-hmm.
where he's somebody who likes to play puppet master. That
Mm-hmm.
doesn't necessarily mean he hates other people or that he has no like he doesn't see people's value. If anything, he sees people's value a little bit more because of being a puppet master.
Yeah. Yeah, he like Epic, I feel like he kind of got lost in wanting to do the like fun kind of like action hero scenes,
Mhm.
like him fighting Poseidon and things like that. That he wanted him to like he wanted to do like kind of like self-insert moments of feeling like a cool action hero.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you and that's kind of what I mean by like understanding the overall kind of message, because if you get lost of like I want to make this character do this thing
Mhm.
because I think it would be fun as opposed or because it's like something that I would want to do if I was in this situation, or I just think that it would be cool, then you
Mhm.
kind of like lose, then you kind of get like veering weirdly off course when you're
Yes.
like trying to adapt something that's already out there, because if you're coming from it from that angle, then you're kind of like you've lost kind of the overall story, like to like for Percy Jackson, like I just did this post the other day, but the very first thing you see really with Percy in the show in the first episode is him looking at the statue of Perseus with Medusa's head. And then he goes back to when he was a little kid, and
Mhm.
Sally is like showing him that statue and explaining to him who Perseus was and talking about Medusa. And that
Mhm.
whole line of like, you know, heroes don't always look like heroes and monsters don't always look like monsters is essentially the entire show like wrapped up in one line of like what they're trying to say. They put that as the first scene in the first episode for a reason, and they had
Mhm.
little like 12-year-old Percy be remembering that scene right before everything starts to happen, as like that's them like setting like the overall story of this entire thing. And
Yeah.
that is like the overall story of this whole thing is Sally explaining to little Percy that Medusa isn't a monster just because she looks like one, and
Mhm.
that Perseus isn't a hero just because he happens to look like one in this statue, and
Yeah.
things like that. And that just sets up everything else that happens, especially with Luke in the first season. And so, then that's what the overall narrative of is of the whole show. And so, them bringing that kind of theme up over and over again, that is
Mhm.
like what they're trying to say in the books. And the very first thing they ever show you is them saying that to like make you see it and tell anybody who knows about this stuff that they know what they're doing. Like
Yeah.
from the very first scene, you know, okay, they like set the tone. This is what this is supposed to be. And they've already like stated it very clearly for anyone to know that this is like where we're going to go. And anyone who knows where they're going to go, they're like, yeah, that's absolutely right.
Mhm.
That's exactly what you should be showing in a story like this. And so you don't have to wonder if they know what they're doing in that way, because they make it clear to you in a way that's like clear to like the audience is already invested,
Yeah.
that they know. And in the opposite way, Avatar: The Last Airbender,
Mhm.
the new version of it,
Yeah.
having the like grandmother recite the like lines from the original like beginning.
Opening. Yeah.
Yeah, and like and also that the opening was, instead of it being Katara accidentally freeing Aang because she's so mad at Sokka for being a little sexist weirdo, and and accidentally like saves Aang because she's just like angry and you can't control your powers when you're angry.
Hmm.
Instead, it just happens just on like pure like happenstance. And so
Yes.
that like that scene in the original was a really good way to like I just said about Percy Jackson, that scene in the original is a great way to kind of show the characterization of those three characters right away
Hmm.
from the beginning. They show how passionate and powerful
Yeah.
Katara is. They show like the kind of like sexist like but funny guy energy and still like being a good person that Sokka is. And they show, and the first thing that Aang asks him when he gets out is like, do you want to go play this game with me? And they
Yeah.
just show like how like innocent he is, even if he is also really powerful. And so right
Yeah.
away, just from that one little scene, you know, you have a clear idea of who these characters are, and they just build on it as the show goes on. But like when you take that out of the original of the adaptation and just replace it with like nothing really that does that in place of it, you're just like left not really knowing who those characters are in the same way.
Hmm.
And so it just feels like something is missing when you're
Yeah.
watching it. And it's not purely like sometimes people get really pedantic about it all of like they can change things and blah blah blah, and it's like it's not about changing it. It's about like not understanding the importance of that scene in the first place, to know
Hmm.
to know not to not know to like replace it with something to like set that tone right away, because the
Yeah.
people who made it generally didn't understand that if they took that scene out that it would be like changing the story for the like the audience.
It's
They
because
generally
they
didn't.
wanted a darker tone. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really, it's once again like putting your own goals ahead of what the work is actually about. And
Hmm.
I will defend their characterization of Zuko because everything that they
Yeah.
added about Zuko does right away show you, like, yes, this is, like the antagonist, but at the same time, he has his reasons for being, like this way, and he's on his own journey. You see that very, very immediately in this version of the show. But yeah, like literally every other characterization, it's like, what's going on here?
Yeah. Okay.
Because yeah, but with Katara also, last little thought when we're talking about this, the way that they set up her like playing around with her powers and that being her with like freeing Aang, what's so significant about their connection as characters is that they are
Mhm.
the last of their kind, and although there are other water tribe and even southern water tribe people, Katara is literally the only southern water bender that she knows of until we get to Hama in like
Mhm.
what is that, season 3.
Mhm.
So they're both the last of their kind and feel that kind of sadness together in a way that I don't think any of the other characters get Aang on that level.
Yeah. And like that's part of why their bond is so great. And
Hmm.
just alone in the first season, like that's why Aang learns how to waterbend like from her and things like that over the
Hmm.
people that he's supposed to learn from, because
Yeah,
she understands things about him that other people just don't get. And
exactly.
when you lose that like initial connection, it's then you kind of are always playing like catch up throughout the rest of the show, and they
Yeah.
don't, and that show doesn't understand that they're trying to like catch up when they're doing that, so they like never actually do.
Yeah.
um, and so the second thing I mentioned was changes to fit the new format, which is like I said, nothing is adapted if it's just a copy.
Yes.
And the thing I thought of was one thing I thought of was there's a movie that just came out recently of How to Train Your Dragon, which is
Hmm.
another like children's book. I never read it because it came out like later than when I would usually read it, and um, I know that people really like it. A lot of Percy Jackson kids really like it too.
Hmm.
I know one of the kids are like friends with the main actor who is in that movie, so I kept seeing things about it.
Yeah.
But one thing that I did see reviews of it on, which is why like it's not really like you don't really see like posts about it in a way, or you don't really see people talking about it that much, is that the reviews I did see of it said that it's basically shot for shot,
Oh
the
wow.
like a literal shot for shot adaptation, like every shot from like the animated movie, that they had multiple animated movies that came out from it, that the first animated movie is exactly the same. And
Oh, that makes Williams' comments about it. He saw it with his grandparents while he was in Truckee, and
Hmm.
he was like, it was good, but I've already saw the cartoon, and I was like, oh, okay. And I
Hmm.
figured he was just saying like, oh, like I already knew what was gonna happen, but no, I didn't realize he was saying like I literally already saw this.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I saw was that that movie got some press because they casted a mixed black girl as like the female lead.
Hmm.
And so that gave you the idea that like Percy Jackson, they were like, having actual diversity and would like improve the story and things like that. But
Yeah,
then when the movie came out, that's what everybody said. I saw either posts of people happy that they just copied the original movie because they literally just wanted like a point for point like
yeah.
remake. Like they literally just wanted like the actors to be like little dolls just like performing these scenes that they
Okay.
wanted to see inside their heads all these years. Or there were people saying how disappointed they were and they were like bored when they were watching the movie because if you watched the original then you knew
Yeah.
absolutely everything that was going to happen. And there was another version of that. Oh, the new Harry Potter show.
Yes.
That one is especially a new special level of creepiness, but because it's just very generally like unsettling and kind of freaks me out. What every like picture, granted like two, but still, they put out a picture of Harry and they put out a picture of Hagrid. Like
Yeah.
every comment I've seen from people even trying to be nice about it is like this is literal cosplay. Like they
Yes.
look like they are cosplaying the original movies. And I made a video saying like this is creepy because this is J.K. Rowling literally making a new cast to redo the movies because she
Yeah.
can't watch her old movies because everyone in those movies hates her now. And so she's literally making people like redo these movies into a TV show so
Yeah.
that so that she can watch it again and like they have like the kid playing Harry look like Daniel Radcliffe. Like the
Hmm.
original, like Harry doesn't need to be wearing like wire glasses or to have his hair look that way. Like they're doing that because that's what Daniel Radcliffe looked like. They have like
Yeah.
Hagrid look like the person who originally played Hagrid. And like I'm like freaked out now to see like literally anyone else in
Yeah.
the movies because they're all just gonna look like that now. And it's just like it's generally like unsettling to look at them and see how similar they it feels like an uncanny valley sort of moment. And like for anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's kind of like the idea that like when you're watching something, it's like the idea of when you're in a dream and you don't realize and you are aware sort of that you're dreaming, but you're still like aware too much that like you can't wake up kind of
Hmm.
thing. Where like you're looking at everything and everything looks like it's supposed to, but everything somehow feels just like a little bit off
Off. Yeah.
somehow. And that's like what those so far that's what it feels like that TV show is going to be like. And also the fact that like everybody is like cosplaying the original person. And then there's just like Black Snape like in the
Yes.
middle of all of that. Like that is going to look wildly
I heard
different
there
from
was
everyone else.
Wait, so I heard something about the actor. I don't know if you did too, about like he may have quit or something really early on, and I don't
There
know
were
if that was just
rumors
a
that
rumor.
he was going to be fired because he went to like trans rights protests
Oh,
in
okay.
England, but he's still there unless in the next like couple weeks or so when they've been announcing things and posting pictures that he suddenly is like magically replaced with somebody else, which I would be happy with. I want him to be free of this. But still, unless something like that happens, then he is, as far as we know,
Hmm.
still in the production. But like even the original Harry Potter movies, I talked about that the original two movies with Christopher Columbus as the director,
Hmm.
he literally just is kind of like copy pasting the books. There's a lot of they're not like done as like a movie. Like they're more just like copying, putting things in that
Yeah.
he knows like the fans of the books would want to see, not from like a storytelling standpoint, but just because they expect them to be there. And that's why those movies are like nostalgic when you could watch them without feeling like a terrible person. But also they just like aren't interesting. They're kind of boring in some parts, especially because they just don't have like a full plot because he's just kind of doing things in a book. But like the thing I said in this part was changing to the new format is like you have to like recognize that the format that you're adapting it from means that it's going to be different. Like
Yeah.
that's the whole point of like even like an animated How to Train Your Dragon into like live action. There should be things in those that are different, but they're not. And so that's why that movie came out. People liked it. People said that they, even there are people who said that they enjoyed it. But like a week, 2 weeks after that movie came out, nobody was talking about it anymore because it just like didn't spark any like discussion, anything that made it feel, it didn't feel like its own thing. It felt like it was
Yeah.
just a copy of something. And like, yeah, they're gonna probably make, I think they're gonna make at least like the second um movie of that thing, but I hope in the second one they let them actually like do something because it's
Yeah.
because part of the whole thing is that nobody wants to make movies like that if you're just like copy pasting stuff and you don't get to make it like your own style.
Yeah, I mean, people think that they want that, and this is probably then a good example for some of those people, at least the people that would have, liked How to Train Your Dragon, whether it be the books or the like original animated one.
Hmm.
Um, because yeah, like one reason that you and I defend the Percy Jackson series to the death is because we are seeing other perspectives besides Percy. Percy is a flawed protagonist, even if he is our beloved protagonist, you know?
Hmm.
And so seeing everybody else's perspective, having those moments where Percy wouldn't be aware of what's happening, especially what's probably going to happen with season two, just from how it sounds that they filmed it,
Hmm.
um, those are going to add more to the source material. And in a way, I love that. Like I love it that it feels like Rick is taking ideas that he had and he didn't think of originally with the books and putting them into this show where he can. Um, so yeah, like adding things to an adaptations can add to the world if
Yeah,
it's done correctly.
like even just bare bones, like this was a book, this is not a book anymore,
Hmm.
and so you have to at least like admit the fact that this is not a book. And so the
Hmm.
things that are going to be in it are going to be shown differently so that it translates to like a movie or a TV show or whatever. Like
Hmm.
Lord of the Rings is pretty much agreed upon as like the best adaptation you could possibly ever imagine.
Yeah.
And like there's a lots of stuff in the books that are not in the movies. And yeah, there are people at the time that were like, why isn't Tom Bombadil in these?
Yeah, Tom Bombadil's the one I hear about the most.
Yeah, and like things like that. But like that's part of what made it different was they only have a certain amount of time, and so and when you're covering all of these characters in a movie, you have to like make sure that the fellowship gets all the time that they need because if you don't care about the fellowship in general, then like there is quite literally zero point at all
Yeah.
in doing anything ever again after that moment. Like you have to care if you don't care about them as like a group and also them as like their own characters, then you don't care about anything else that happens after that, and you're not
Hmm.
going to be invested. And even if you make the best movie ever, the audience isn't going to be invested in it because they just never felt like that attachment. Like when we
Yeah.
were talking about season one of Percy Jackson, even back when we first talked about it, I remember saying when we got to like the finale episode that I was like, the scene with Luke, like revealing that is literally the entire season.
Hmm.
Like that if that scene was not done well and didn't come across well, the entire first season was just like you might as well not even have made it because that is the scene. That is the
Yeah.
scene where every single thing they set up for the entire first season pays off. If this doesn't pay off and you don't leave feeling like horribly betrayed by Luke and really upset for Percy and also Annabeth, then you just you just wasted an entire season of our time. And like it does pay off exponentially, and so it like fits it in the same way that like Lord of the Rings does pay off. But like to compare that to something that's not adapted well, to talk about like Avatar the Last Airbender again, like there are big scenes that are supposed to happen at the end of the first season of Avatar, season 1, that
Hmm.
like from what I've heard like have to have not happened on the show because they like are just missing kind of like the setup to it all. That
Hmm.
it's like the thing I mainly heard about was that Zuko's moment at like the end of the first season when he like helps when he helps like Aang a little bit, and
Hmm.
it's like the first hint that he's not just like a horrible monster, that it didn't
Yeah.
happen the same way on the show. And it just like changes things a lot and just takes away a lot of like that his characterization, and also just like setting things up for a little bit later.
Hmm.
And when you don't have that, it's just like you're missing like the payoff of why all these things happen the way that they did. You can tell me, but like I heard that
I don't
Katara
really
and
remember. But yeah.
the old man who's horrible and sexist, that
Haku,
they
the
don't really
person
have
that
like a
gets it.
whole like big fight in the live action version like they're supposed to at the end when they get to
I
like
think they do have a fight, but I feel like it's not as gratifying. I can't remember
yeah.
because, to be honest, a lot of the stuff that I didn't like about it is just like I let it whoosh over my head. Really,
Yeah.
the only thing I was like, okay, I'm gonna hold on to these Iroh and Zuko scenes because they're so
Hmm.
good. But yeah, um, I can't even remember how the first season ends with them. I have to hope when it comes to Avatar that for the next season, because there has been so much feedback that maybe they'll do better.
I
That
do
maybe,
I will
yeah.
say I think that it is fascinating
Hmm.
that one of the executive producers for season 1 of Avatar: The Last Airbender on Netflix left the production after season 1 and joined Percy Jackson.
Yep.
And is now the last 2 seasons has been the second season that he's in is Titan's Curse, that's about to start filming in like 3 weeks.
Hmm.
He's still one of the executive producers on the show.
Yeah.
And so when I saw that, when I originally saw that news, I was like, oh, you know who's the winner in this situation. He's like, get
Exactly.
me out of here. And like to be fair, like one of the other executive producers, I believe is Craig Silverstein, is
Hmm.
somebody that executive producer worked with previously on another show. And so when they needed like another person for at the beginning of season 2, obviously you would bring in like a friend of yours like that you've worked with before. That's a lot of the people that they add in when it
Yeah.
comes to that kind of stuff, are people that they already know already, who already are in Canada, who already live there, and so they don't have to figure out a way to get there or anything like that. Um, and he was already obviously living in Vancouver because Avatar: The Last Airbender filmed most of season 1, and they're at least filming part of season 2. They filmed season 2 there, and they're filming at least part of season 3
Hmm.
in Vancouver too. And so he was
Okay.
already living there, and so it was easy for him to just like switch. But it does like make me that was interesting to
Yeah.
see how after season 1 he left, and they kind of try to use him as like the like try to be like he was the problem.
Oh
And I was
gosh.
like, "Are you sure?"
Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah,
Um.
we'll see. Um, Okay, so the next thing, this is something that I think is really important, but it's interesting with productions if this like works or not, which is like explaining the world building so that even new people will can understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And so one thing that's great with Percy Jackson and the Olympians is that brand new people who didn't know anything about anything, who have never even read the books before, watch the first season and they grasp every single thing you're supposed to. They
Hmm.
understand that the gods are the problem. They're really betrayed by Luke betraying them. They were shocked by that.
Yeah.
They really like Percy. They love Percy and Grover. They love Percy and Annabeth. They love all the kids at camp. Like all the things you want them to feel, they all felt it, even if they've never read the books before. And that's like the whole point of what sometimes adaptations happen where you can tell that they just like assume that the
Hmm.
people that are watching have already like read the book or like watched the other versions, and so they
Yeah.
don't take the time to like explain it, but that's not how this is supposed to work.
Yeah, it kind of goes off of like what I was saying earlier about how it feels like they're just going for nostalgia bait with
Hmm.
movies. That's lazy writing. Let's
Hmm.
call it what it is. It's lazy writing because then you don't have to do the world building that's required. You come in with an audience that already knows what you're talking about.
Yeah,
And
like the
yeah.
the Percy Jackson movies, I'm thinking about like Medusa in the Percy Jackson movies, that she just shows up being like this weirdly overly sexual woman who's having a lesbian relationship with Persephone for some reason.
Apparently, yeah.
Apparently, which like go off, like do whatever you want. But it's just like nobody like she doesn't really explain who she is or like why she's there or why she's Medusa or you're they're
Why
just
she
like
has a Persephone booty call, bro.
yeah, like why anything is going on, like why she's like half snake or whatever. People just automatically just think, the people who made those movies just think like everyone knows who Medusa is with like the snakes in her hair. And
Yeah.
so they don't like, the only thing they explain is the idea that like that if you look at her in the eye you're gonna turn to stone, and so they kill her with an iPod touch.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's such a sign of the times.
Oh my god.
Oh gosh,
But
yeah.
still, like that's like the only thing they really explain about her. And like
Mhm.
another example of that in the same stupid movie is that Persephone is in the underworld in the summertime,
Yeah.
when that is the time when Persephone is supposed to be on land, because that is the reason why we have summer.
Yeah. So, actually, okay, I've heard classicists make the argument that because like foliage dies off in the summer, that maybe that's supposed to be the time she's in the underworld. So maybe they were going for that, but they didn't even explain it.
No, they didn't. And it was, and literally I've seen like normal people who don't know anything about Greek mythology, don't care about anything past watching that movie. I've seen them be like, why is she there? When they show this scene of her with Hades, they're like, isn't this in the summertime? Shouldn't she not be there right now? And even like if people who don't know anything about Greek mythology are like, wait, but she's not supposed to be here right now. It like shows that literally nobody
Hmm.
like brought that up to them, or like, or they even like, I guess, listened to it. They probably, I'm sure Rick Riordan's head was exploding somewhere in the distance.
Hmm.
But they did not listen to anything he said in the first movie, so why would they? I don't even think he tried when they were
Yeah.
making the second movie, because they didn't listen to anything he said in the first one. But like I said before, Harry Potter is a good example of that. In the first couple movies, there's things that are happening and they don't explain what any of them mean. Like the way I saw like the Harry Potter movies back in the day, I was 17 when the first one came out, and
Hmm.
one of my best friends had read like I think all of the books that had come out at that point, and she was telling me about it, and I have this thing, or I used to do this thing where if there's a movie coming out of like a book, I wanted to like read it before I would see the movie.
Hmm.
And so it was like it came out like Thanksgiving weekend in 2001, and I remember this because my mom went to a bookstore and bought me the first Harry Potter book,
Yeah.
because I was telling her about it, and I read it in one day. I read it in like the night of Thanksgiving, and then like Thanksgiving Day, and then the next morning at like 9 a.m. I went to go see the movie with that friend that had already seen, like, read all the other books. And I
Hmm.
remember it because when the DVD came out, I showed it to like my best friend at the time who I don't think ever read the books for whatever reason.
Hmm.
And there were things in the movie that I was having to explain to him and another friend of ours that didn't read the books until she was like 27,
Yeah.
um, because they did not explain how these like basic things worked in the book. They didn't even fully explain like what Hogwarts even was, or that this is like the only magical school in all of England. And they were like, wait, everybody goes to this one school? Or
Hmm.
even just the idea of like why they're trying to run through the wall at the train station, that's the way to like get on the they just there's like simple little things that they just don't explain, and they
Hmm.
just assume it's one of those things that like when they were writing the script, they just that assumption they have in the back of their mind that anyone who sees this movie has already read the books before. So they just don't think about the idea of like there could be somebody watching this is the first time they've ever seen it, and
Yeah.
they just didn't think about it, and so they never explained it. And so if you haven't seen it, you're like what is going on? Like that kind of thing happens sometimes with Marvel movies, and
Hmm.
Marvel goes back and forth about what to do about that. Like whether they should make like deep cut kind of movies for like the big super fans of comics, or if they should try to make them more accessible to like a larger audience. They kind of
Yeah.
go back and forth between the different movies, what they want to do. But there is that kind of thing in Marvel too, where there's some things that you can tell from like the jokes they make that you're just supposed to know what they mean. And if you're someone like me who never read the comics, because why would I read something if you're going to overwrite it like immediately after it's over?
Hmm.
um I immediately like can't just take it seriously if I know it's not going to even matter once it's done. if you're somebody like that with me, then I'm like, I don't know what any of these things mean. And
Yeah.
back when I saw Marvel movies a lot, I went to them with somebody who was a really big comic book fan that was a friend of mine. And after every movie, we would go out to eat, and she would tell me what all these things in the movie meant, and all the like the references in it that went completely over my head that I had no idea what they meant. And I always liked the movie more when she explained all those things to me. But
Yeah.
she had to explain all of them to me because the movie itself didn't do that.
Yeah.
And it's just one one thing I will say with this that's annoying with like fandom stuff is sometimes fandom stuff says this sort of stuff, but they're being annoying because they're talking about things in a way that like isn't real. Like the Star Wars fandom does that, where there are people that are like, "Oh, well, you have all these Star Wars novels that are connected to the movies. People shouldn't have to read the novels and the comics and stuff to understand what's going on in the movies." You don't?
Yeah, you don't. Like, I saw something today where someone was talking about how Palpatine killed his whole family and then was sitting in a ship without them. And I was like, I never knew this about his personality before he became who he is. And, like, literally no one's ever told me about this. I still know he's probably always been evil.
You don't have to. Like the movies that are the books that come out, especially since Disney bought Star Wars, are really well written.
Hmm.
They're really fun. The characters in them are fun, and they're fun in the way that like they introduce like planets or cities or whatever that they show in the movies, and that's like kind of the only like connection they really have. And so you feel like more of a connection to those places because you read about them already in a book that you enjoyed and you liked the characters in those books and you like still care about them in that way. And
Yeah.
so when they go to like these planets for like 35 seconds in one of like the big movies, the sequel trilogy movies or whatever, you're more excited than you normally would be by them being there because you spend a bunch of time on that on in a book with on that planet. But like you don't need to read that book
Yeah.
and to order in order to like understand what's going on in the planet. Like in the same way with like Lord of the Rings, like you don't need to read the Lord of the Rings books in order to like understand what's going on in the movies. They explain everything for you without ever having to read the books, which thank God,
Yeah.
because those books are like really dense. It took me a month to read them in high school, and that's a really really long time for me because I usually read, especially then, I would read a book in like one day. And the
Yeah.
fact that it took me an entire month to read those books tells you how like dense and stuff they are. Like I would
Yeah.
go back and like reread pages over like more than once because I wasn't like really retaining anything that they were saying.
Yeah, Tolkien is a great world builder, but if, in written form, it's a lot.
Yeah, and it's just a lot. It's a different style. It's like the old world style that like George R. R. Martin kind of tries to write in with Game of Thrones. That's like why I gave Game of Thrones a chance back in the day because
Oh,
it
yeah,
like
there's just too many triggers in that one, I'm sure.
yeah. I mean like the first book I think it was. Yeah, the first book definitely is when they show like Cersei and Jaime as like a whole thing. And I'm like,
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
goodbye. And like I read those before I was really like aware of anything. And I read all of the books, but every time there were scenes with the two of them together and then also just like Cersei on her own because Cersei is the abuser in that situation, which I always find interesting that the abuser is like the woman, which is
Hmm.
not usually what it is, especially in incest sort of situations. It's like normally, I would just like skip. Like I have no idea what Cersei ever did in any of the books. I read all the books, but every time she was on page, I would just skip them and not read anything that she was
Yeah,
saying because my brain didn't want to read what she was saying because she was
an
the
abuser.
abusive one.
Yeah.
Um, okay, that kind of goes in line with the next point I said was no changes just for like change's sake, basically. Like change things that make sense for the story, but don't change things just to say that you changed it. Like to talk shit about the Percy Jackson movies again. Like Grover is black in the movies for no reason. Like he's black and then also
Horny as
really
fuck.
over sexualized.
Yeah, so okay, they did a black stereotype that was really negative for no reason.
Yes.
Which is what you're getting at here.
Yeah.
And yeah, so they made him super horny. He says lines like it's almost like have you seen Not Another Teen Movie?
Yes.
Yeah, that whole scene where the two black guys are at the party and they're like, "Wait, you're already here? There's only supposed to be one of us." And like they talk about like, "Oh, I'm just supposed to say lines like this and that's my whole motivation."
Hmm.
That was Grover. That was Grover in the movies. And it like you don't necessarily have to explain it like in the case of Annabeth. It doesn't have to be explained because her character is relatively the same. You know, the Annabeth in the show is basically Annabeth in the books, even if they're not doing the exact same thing at the same time.
Well, I will say there was someone named Tatiana did a really good YouTube video going into how Annabeth being black makes her character and her story just like better in every possible way, which
Hmm.
is true. And like, and that's what I mean when I say that like Grover is black for no reason, because Annabeth being black, even if they don't like telegraph it in a way, like don't like have blinking lights and be like, oh, this is happening to you because they're being racist. There are things in like the with how they write her that just like make more sense, like when they're on the train in the fourth episode of the TV show, and
Hmm.
the police think that they like ruined their own like room or whatever on the train, and Percy is like, "What the fuck is your problem?" Basically, like more like getting mad at the police officers, and Arian, and Grover is trying to like be the more like peacekeeper one, but he's still like more mad. Like they're showing that they're upset at them for thinking that they did that. And Annabeth is the one that stays calm, and all she asks them like, "Are you going to arrest us?" Which is a very valid question to ask, especially being a young black girl. And the police get mad at her, and
Hmm.
like Percy is sitting there yelling at them, and they get mad at her for asking, "Are you going to arrest us?" And they don't
Yeah.
need to say, like, this is happening to her because she's a young black girl and Black Lives Matter. And whatever things that people who are ridiculous about DEI think will happen in productions like this. But it's just like, you watch that and you know. Like, you know that the police are reacting to them that way because she's a young black girl. And that's the way that they are doing things. Even at the end of that episode, after Percy has jumped and they don't know where he is yet, and her and Grover are standing outside, and she sees like the fates and are like, oh shit, like one of us is gonna die because I just saw the fates like cut one of our strings, and she's worried about that. And Grover keeps trying to get her attention and is like, we have to go, the police are here.
Hmm.
Like that is a brown kid and a black girl talking about
Yes.
like, we need to leave, the cops are here, and the building just blew up, they're gonna blame, like they don't have to say those words because this is a well written like production, but it's just a thing that like there are people of color who are playing these roles. There are people of color actually acting how people of color would act. Like they're not like, a lot of times in productions, like when Grover is black in the movies, there is nothing different about his character except for making the stereotype they make him do much worse. But
Hmm.
there's nothing unique or different about his character. Like being like a different race doesn't, you can't just like the whole like blackface thing with white people, you can't just like color your face a different color and then be that person.
Yeah.
Like being that identity has an entire life and culture and everything that we cannot understand. You can't just like dye your hair black and become like a black person. You can't be one of those cringy white people who walk around putting like dreads in your hair until your hair falls out because our hair can't handle doing like braids and things like that. Like you can't just be that person and suddenly be just like part of their culture, because we're not part of their culture. We can never be. But like when you see the characters in Percy Jackson playing who have a different race in the original version, it makes their characters more interesting. Like when you
Yeah.
think about Thalia, like Thalia being black is so interesting because it makes like the dynamic between her and Annabeth way more interesting, way more like deep and like meaningful than it would be if they weren't. And because instead of it just being like Thalia is a hard ass and is just trying to be hard on Annabeth to teach her how to like survive in this world, it's like, no, I know how hard living in this world is going to be as another black girl. So I'm going to like make you be ready by the time you get to camp so you know how to handle this stuff, because
Yeah.
everything is going to be harder for us. Like Tati on her video talks about that, but that's very much what happens. Like this show actually shows these characters in a way that it does, they don't just like cast people of a different race and then act like they're exactly the same. they cast them but show how their character is improved by that, because it makes their storyline different, and they don't need to make it like overly obvious or anything like that. It makes it better that they
Yeah.
don't have to.
It
But
pretty
when you see
speaks for itself. Yeah.
the Harry Potter TV show, if Snape is going to stay black, nothing about Snape's story is going to change, and it's going to make it like a legitimate hate crime to
Yeah.
make him act that make him act that out. They're going to do it because nobody in that production is going to actually be self-aware enough to understand that you can't just put a black person in your production and have him look like the villain in every single movie and literally act out some of the harmful tropes and stereotypes about black people, that they like get ahead when they shouldn't, and like having him be like part of a literal Nazi organization trying to destroy the entire world, and be like bullying children, and nobody, his entire plot is like that. No, he you think that he'll be fired every single year, and you don't understand why he's not.
Hmm.
He literally breaks every single rule. He's terrorizing and torturing children, and he
Yeah.
gets away with it because Dumbledore just like lets it slide. Having somebody, the only black person in this entire cast, be the one that's doing those sort of things is dangerous. And
Yes.
they don't understand that because they don't care.
Yeah.
They generally don't care, but it's like there needs to be like a change. You can't just like insert somebody in like that and act like everything that happens to them is going to be the same. Like with Percy Jackson stuff, like Mason made a video the other day
Hmm.
saying that like he wanted the Confederate soldiers to still be soldiers,
Hmm.
like to still be Confederate soldiers in season 2, and he was like disappointed that they weren't going to be. And I tried to leave a comment to be like, I don't think any black actor should have to like act out like having this like we are women, hear us roar moment of like going against people that are super racist to them, because I don't want these actresses to have to act out scenes about racism.
Or at least not
Um,
an entire crew. Like
Not like
I've
so
said
of
before, one of them looks like they could be a Confederate
yeah,
soldier.
and not so like overt, like have like literal lines of them saying like racist things to them, and them having to like respond to them, and having this moment of being able to like get them to do whatever they want now, kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
if they show those people that we can know are Confederate soldiers on that ship along with other people because they're wearing like the uniform, and then we see that Clarice is in charge of them and things like that, then they can make that point without having to like hit them over the head with it. But like having the actors have to actually act out scenes like that is just like a whole other thing that it feels like cosplaying like the whole like black pain stereotype. The whole
Hmm.
That's like part of why I like that there's so many black characters in Percy Jackson, because their roles are not inherently about them being black in that way. Like a lot of productions that have a lot of black people starring in it are usually about like slavery or
Yeah.
racism or something depressing and sad. But like in this, they are those, and it makes their story better, but it's not inherently, their character isn't about that. Like Annabeth being black makes her story way better, but Annabeth's story is not about the fact that she's black and people being like racist to her all the time or something. And it's not
Hmm.
like that with Thalia or Clarice or anyone else that I can't remember right now. And and so it's like there's a lot of good things happening with those characters, and black actresses get to play those characters out and have complex stories that they usually don't get a chance to do. But I just don't want them to have to act out scenes that are purely just like, knocking down racist people. I want them to have a
Yeah.
break from having to ever think about having scenes like that. And it's just like an uncomfortable thing for like for a production that is run by like like all the executive producers are mainly white. One of them is not, but none of them are black. And it just is a weird feeling of them making them act out scenes like that, and that's not this sort of production. Like even
Yeah.
the smallest thing I remember from the beginning of Sea of Monsters is that they had um Leah and Clarice got to like pick out what kind of hair they wanted for the season, which is usually something that actors don't get to decide, things like that.
Yeah.
And so them letting them decide what kind of hair they wanted is a big deal. And for them to even have people on set that know how to do things with black hair is
Exactly.
that alone is a big deal. And they freaking better because half their cast is. And so
Yeah.
they do, but it's like that kind of stuff of like people sometimes change things to be like, oh, I'm being different and edgy, but there isn't actually
Like
a
a
reason.
point. Yeah.
Like, there isn't a reason for why it's really happening. It's just like happening so you can be like, it's not a copy because I made Snape black for no reason at all whatsoever. Or whatever else Harry Potter decides to like minutely change while they make everybody act like clones of the original characters in a really
Oh my
creepy,
gosh.
weird
Yeah.
way. But I know there's other adaptations. I can't think of them right now, but that's just like the general story. Like
Hmm.
a lot of Avatar: The Last Airbender stuff, like the little things they changed, it's not like overly important things, but they still changed them in a way that it just makes you notice them and you're like, but why did you do this like really small thing that doesn't even
Yeah.
matter? Like,
Yeah.
I
Well, they
don't.
did big things where it was like, okay, you misunderstood this character, but that's going back to our first
Yeah.
bullet.
And then what was the other things I said? Oh, I said let the original story be improved over time because that's
Hmm.
something that Rick Riordan does a really good job of overall, is that he's never really been one that like is thinks that he's like above criticism or above like feedback in that sort of way. Even when he was just like when he was putting out his books, he listened to what
Hmm.
people said and improved upon them because that's what he actually wants to do, because he actually cares about like what his audience thinks of him, and he wants them to enjoy the story, and he wants it to be good for everybody.
Hmm.
And so I that's one of the reasons why I think the Percy Jackson adaptation is such a good adaptation, because it
Yeah.
adds things that are not in the original but make the story so much better. Like
Yeah.
so much better. Like I don't think I'll ever get over watching the finale for the first time,
Yeah.
and having watching Percy like sit there and tell Luke like, I know what you did. And
Hmm.
like that is such like a different change even before they introduced Annabeth, which was like another amazing thing from that scene. Just having him go out there, knowing when he's going out there that something is wrong, that something has happened with Luke, and like Luke is asking him like, why are you being so quiet? And things like that. Instead of it being like Luke taking him out there like a sitting duck and just like trying to kill him and leave, this
Yeah.
version of Percy like understand or has already put together like something happened, like you gave me those shoes and I almost saw my best friend fling into hell when he was wearing them.
Yeah.
Like something is wrong, like something's happening here and I don't know what it is. And them having, I always say this, but them doing the whole thing of Annabeth being there when she is invisible, the way that she did multiple times when they were on the quest, was a really good way of doing it. They set it up during the quest in a way where you're not even like thinking about it. It's just something
Hmm.
that they do a couple times to make sure that Percy stays safe when they're in situations like that. And so
Yeah.
when she does it again, it's not like shocking in a way like they would do it, but it is such a cool like change from the original story that just makes everything so much better. Like it just is better. It is
Hmm.
better to have Percy and Luke end up fighting because he's so desperate to stop him from leaving, because he's trying to stop him from being horrible, only to
Yeah.
realize how horrible he really is when he hurts him on purpose and is about to kill him, and have Annabeth throw the dagger that Luke gave her at his head and be like, I'm done with you now. And for
Yeah.
him to like realize that that moment is better because he realizes like, I'm not going to get away with this. Like the original Luke in the
Hmm.
original books poisons Percy and then just leaves thinking that, he's going to be able to keep going with
Yeah.
everything that he's been doing so far. But this version of Luke realizes like, this isn't going to work. They don't like, I just revealed my entire plan to Percy and he's gonna live because I can't kill both of them. And so now I'm gonna have to leave, and I'm gonna have to leave knowing that everyone's gonna find out what I'm doing. And
Hmm.
instead of it's also the fact that Annabeth is gonna know, it's like, well, I'm screwed. And
Yeah.
it just gives them like a little bit of an upper hand that I always love that scene, because one thing that really bothers me about abusive people that sometimes happens when they adapt them into things like this is people have this idea that abusive people like that are like really smart and
Hmm.
like really like intelligent, and they're like smarter
Yeah.
than
And that's
everybody else, and
rare.
they somehow always like have everybody like they're always like 10 steps ahead and they always know what's going on. And like the whole thing in the news right now about like the Epstein list, when all of his victims have already given people the list that the people think they need from the government, because they imagine that like Epstein sat somewhere like having like a whiskey sour in like a room with a really fancy looking chair writing down like a spreadsheet. Like abusers don't do stuff like that. And like the
Yeah,
list that you all want has already been out there. You just don't care what his victims say. You just want
exactly.
the government to say it to you because you think that it means something more coming from them somehow. But that whole situation reminded me of that idea. And like the thing that I always loved about that scene with Luke is that Luke thinks he's so smart. He
Hmm.
thinks he's fooled Annabeth and Percy. He doesn't even consider the idea they could possibly have like figured out what he was doing this whole time. He's not even worried. He's not worried
Hmm.
at all when he goes out there that them like the shoes almost killing them would have like made them realize anything. And in this version, it does. And so he goes out there and he gets surprised by like a couple 12-year-old kids who are smart enough to and like are aware enough of people to realize like you tried to kill us. What
Yeah.
what was that about? And but he's caught completely off guard during that entire scene because he never thought that they would ever realize that about him. He was so sure he had been getting away with everything at camp all of this time that
Hmm.
it never crossed his mind that Percy would be somebody that hasn't been around him since he was a little kid, and so he would notice when things was weird with him. It just
Hmm.
they outsmarted him without even like trying. Like that's why I like to make fun of Luke and say he's not that smart because he's not. Like they
Yeah.
and like I know some people see that scene and they're like they shouldn't have been able to do that, and it's like why not? Like Luke was very cocky. Overall in all of the books,
Hmm.
he is very cocky. He doesn't think that he could ever be stopped. He's convinced that Kronos is going to be his like daddy figure for all time and is going to do everything that he wants. He looks at everybody else as if he knows more than everyone and everyone else is stupid. And so
Yeah.
he would never consider the idea that like if Percy and Annabeth did figure out what he was doing that they wouldn't take his side and that he wouldn't be able to convince them to go with him anyway. And so that's just the stuff that people like him don't consider that because they can't imagine a world where they're not right,
Hmm.
but they are wrong. And
Yeah.
that's like that whole thing that abusive people aren't really smart. They're just really good at scaring people and making them too afraid to like say anything. And even in that book, like they don't say anything. They're at camp for a little bit with him
Hmm.
there, and they don't say anything until they have like an excuse to be away in the forest when everyone else is distracted by watching like fireworks and stuff, where no one will notice that they're gone. Like they
Hmm.
pick to do it then because everyone is distracted because they don't want to scare everybody.
Yeah.
And so it's like they pick a time when no one else is around, where no one will know that they're doing this in case it does go wrong. And it does go wrong. But like that's why that scene is better because it just, those things are true about Percy and Annabeth's characterization. They just come
Hmm.
out sooner because they changed that scene in the book. And that's why talking about Sea of Monsters, I'm like, I don't know what I'm even talking about half the time
Yeah.
because I don't know the things that they've already changed that I don't even know about. But
Yeah,
we
that's
can
the
just go
point.
on what we know now. But like that kind of change is a really smart thing because it just makes the characterizations of those characters even more clear of like how like a lack of morals that Luke really has and how far gone he is. And the fact that Percy and Annabeth are smart, also abused kids that
Hmm.
don't trust people and would realize when somebody is trying to mess with them, even if it's somebody that they want to trust, they would still realize it. And like
Yeah.
that, the extreme betrayal especially that Percy feels in that moment, that Luke pretended to be a really good friend of his for a while only to realize that he was just pretending the whole time, that's a gigantic betrayal. And the way that they do that scene when Luke tries to convince him to join him and stuff just makes the betrayal even worse. And it
Hmm.
just makes people actually feel how bad he actually felt
Yeah.
during that scene, which will help in future seasons when Luke starts doing things. There likely won't be as many people being like, but what about, but Percy should forgive him, or what about Luke, or
Oh
whatever.
my gosh. Yeah.
Because that scene makes you so freaking sad that you can't be that upset at Percy for not wanting to talk to Luke anymore when you remember how bad that felt. And like a similar way with other things, Lord of the Rings changed some things, but in a really good way.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, Return of the King is like the most perfect movie that's ever existed in the history of the world. And there are things that are different in the movie than there is in the book, and they're done really, really well. Like, just really well. You care so much about those characters in an absolutely like ridiculous sort of way. Like, you care so much. Like, just like the scene when they're about to go into battle with Mordor and Aragorn's, like, the whole idea during that scene that they don't even know if Frodo is alive. They have no idea if Frodo and Sam are even alive, but they're just going to battle in case they are.
Yeah.
So that if they are alive, that they'll be okay. But they have absolutely no clue if they're okay. They're just doing all of it on the hope that they will be okay. And it's just like little stuff like that, or like even though the end, like Frodo leaving happens in the books, just the way that it happens is just slightly different, and it just is so emotional for everyone involved that you just like cry. I watch video clips of that scene and cry without even watching the entire. I haven't watched the Lord of the Rings movies since I got like feelings again, because I know I'm just gonna cry like nonstop the entire time I watch them, because I used to cry when I watched them when I had no feelings at all because I was too traumatized to like feel things. And I was like, if they made me cry when I was like numb to the world and could not feel things, I will actually die watching these movies now.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Or
get that.
Star Wars is another example of like how they changed things slightly with like Kylo being Han and Leia's kid, Han and Leia breaking up because he killed everybody, just like Luke being gone, like doing things that are slightly different than people want. Like, yeah, people can like stomp their feet about that. But those are good decisions because they made the characters not different than how they are, but it just showed the real effects of what they were going through on them as people, instead of it being just like, I don't even know, something weird.
Yeah.
But it's just like adaptations don't have to be like perfect, exact replicas of the original thing. They never will be. Like, I always say that the third Harry Potter movie is by far the best one. And actually, the first movie of Deathly Hallows is also a really good one, but that's because they inserted all those scenes with Harry and Hermione that aren't in the books. Like, that's why that movie is good, is because they show them more having like a bond in the way that they would. Like, when I was reading those books, when I was reading that book for the first time, I was just like, wow, like they're alone in this tent by themselves. No, literally nobody else in the entire world knows where they are. Ron is a horrible human being. And at that point, I didn't even want him to find them because I was so mad at him for doing the same thing again. And like, I was so upset at him for doing that I stopped reading the book for like an hour and a half because I was so mad that I didn't even want to like think about him, because I was so angry that he did that to Harry again when he did that already earlier on in the story. Like, what is wrong with you? But anyway, but like that's like a very like vulnerable thing that they're doing. Like, nobody knows where they are. They're just completely alone. They're completely cut off from everybody else. No one can know where they are, because if anyone finds them, they're immediately in danger. And so it's not even that they're alone, like they have to be alone, and other people are scary because they don't know if they're either putting their friends in danger like they do with Luna and her dad, or they don't know if somebody's secretly somebody bad. Like, they go into town where Harry's parents are buried, and they almost die getting eaten by a gigantic snake. And if they died there, nobody would ever find them because they would have no idea where they are. And it's just, that's such like this, and the things in that movie that made that movie so good was the fact that they had all those scenes with Harry and Hermione, like, showing how upset they were by what they were going through, and like by having to like literally like lean on each other during all of that time to try to get through it. That Hermione, this is like the stuff with J.K. Rowling that is like absolutely insane, but like Hermione is quite, not even exaggerating, the only person in the Harry Potter books that never questions him. Like, she always is on his side. She always believes in him. She always thinks that he can do it. She never like questions him. She never questions anything about him. She always is there with him,
Yeah.
always believing. She is the only one. She is the only one in that entire book series that never like faults him, never gets mad at him, never does any of that kind of stuff with him. And so it's like, of course they were the two that would be like, as when I got to like the seventh book and Ron started doing his stuff of like trying to get her to like leave with him, I was
Yeah.
like, she's never gonna leave with you. And like I didn't even like think about it. I'm like, she would never leave him. Like never.
Hmm.
She would never leave him. And so I was like, you need to go. But like I was like, she will never leave him like this.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's exactly what happened. And like it was interesting seeing people get upset at them putting scenes of them in the seventh book or like scenes of them in like the third book that they felt like shouldn't have been there. But I was like, they have these storylines. And unlike J.K. Rowling, who is so up her own ass that she doesn't know what she's doing and also a fascist, like when you put them in a movie, you have to like people are going to notice these things. Like in the third book, they have an entire storyline where Harry and Hermione are just running around saving everybody's life when they're doing the time turner situation. Like you have to put in scenes of them interacting in that way and like they literally just showed all the scenes that are in the original book, but people were like upset by them. And it's like they're in the book. Like these are not like imagined scenes. They're just showing them in a slightly different way, sure, because they're wearing like normal clothes
Yeah.
or whatever, and the actors have like natural chemistry because they were actually like really good friends when they were filming and stuff. But it's like they're not like lacking in this way, or they're not like shoving in scenes that shouldn't be there. This is the most important storyline of that book is
Yeah.
the time turner sequence. Like they have to save everyone's life. If they don't do it, then everyone is going to die. And
Yeah.
so it's like they have to do it. She wrote this scenes that way. She could have wrote like a scene that she could have like had Ron not break his leg and for him to be able to come with them, but she wrote the scenes where Ron broke his leg and he couldn't go and it was just the two of them. And in the same thing, like she had Ron go off and be crazy in the seventh movie, and so all those scenes of the two of them just alone being super traumatized alone were happened. And so it's easy to expand on those things because it's like, yeah, they're alone by themselves, like waiting for people to die and like
Yeah.
listening on the radio to hear if people that they love have died yet. And they have all of the pressure of knowing that they have to figure out how to save the entire world by themselves. And if they can't do it, everyone else is going to die, including them. And so like they have to figure that out. And so yeah, putting in scenes of them doing that kind of stuff makes sense because that's what if you let those characters actually be characters, that's what they would be doing if J.K. Rowling wasn't so like on the path of making these characters be in relationships that don't really make sense.
Yeah.
For how they were set up. Like she refused to go with anyone else, but like when you have somebody you can't just do that when you're directing a movie. You have to make the movie make sense. Like Harry and Hermione are the ones with all these scenes alone. Like it's them that go to his parents' graves for the first time and like cry about them being dead, and it's like they're doing those scenes together in the book. And so like the characters acting it out on screen doesn't make it inherently more, but it just makes you realize that these scenes were written this way originally by her for some unknown reason.
Yeah.
Like,
Especially
I
that
don't-
she didn't ship them together, which is like the weirdest part.
Yeah, but I think that's why a lot of people liked the first half of Deathly Hallows because of all of the scenes with them in like the tent, because that was like real. Like that's like the real like kind of tension and just like emotion of all the trauma they're going through that J.K. Rowling just like pretends like isn't there most of the time.
Yeah.
But like that's what that is. Like you would have scenes like that. They would be going through really hard things like that, and they would need to do things like that in order to try to like survive times like that.
Yeah. Try to
and so
just like relieve the tension, even like that scene of them dancing when Hermione takes off the locket for a few seconds.
Yep. Yeah, it's like scenes like that. Like the only way to ever survive super traumatic times is you have to have like moments where you can like laugh or just like feel good for a little bit. Like you really cherish the moments when you do feel good because they hardly ever happen.
Yeah.
And so they're just really you need those things to almost like remember why you're even trying to do the things that you're trying to do. And
Hmm.
that's those sort of moments for them, like season 3 of Titan's Curse. Moments like that is them doing the damn scene of like,
Hmm.
we're going to the damn snack bar
Yep.
and we're going to do the damn this and damn that's them remembering like in the middle of all of this horrible stuff like why they're doing all of this stuff by just letting themselves laugh. And
Hmm.
Zoe's sitting there being like, I don't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
But which makes it all even funnier. But like that's like the little bit of like laughing. You need to do things like that sometimes when you're under that amount of stress. And
Yeah.
like Harry Potter is written in this way where like her characters aren't real people. So you have to like insert scenes like that if you're doing adaptations of it to make it make sense.
Yeah.
Like you just do.
Yeah.
Oh, the last thing I had was just a phrase. I was watching our 50th episode that we did, which was the episode we did when they announced that Titan's Curse was renewed,
Hmm.
and so we were really excited. And um, I forget where Becky said it. Somewhere Becky Riordan at the time was talking about creative autonomy. I think
Hmm.
she was just posting about it on Threads, and we were talking about it. But essentially, she used that phrase of like you need to let creators have creative autonomy. At the time, she was talking about the idea of like what's always been coming up the last few months of like different characters not being in it just because you want them to be. At the
Yeah.
time, she was talking about Will like not being in like the first 5 seasons because that would like mess up his character when he's actually important in Heroes of Olympus because he doesn't do anything. And like
Yeah.
in the last Olympian, he's just kind of like a named person that happens to be there.
Yeah.
But she was basically talking about like you need to let like creative people be able to like do things creatively and like put their own spin on things.
Yeah.
Because if not, then it's like How to Train Your Dragon, where it's
Yeah.
literally just like a copy and pasted version of the original, and there's nothing about it inherently that makes it like special or different. And like there's a lot with Percy Jackson that makes it different just based on like who they cast for the different roles. But the fact
Hmm.
that they cast people that don't look anything like the original characters, for example, is a good way of showing like how they have that in mind overall for like the entire production. That they
Hmm.
don't care if every character looks different or whatever than how you imagine them to be in the books because that's not what makes them their character anyway.
Yes.
And so that's not going to be the make or break thing for them. So they don't care if their cast doesn't look anything like the book character versions because the character isn't just that anyway. And it's that kind of a thing of like the people who are doing these episodes, they are doing like this thing as like a group project essentially, but they need to be able to like be themselves also. Like the
Hmm.
directors showing like their own vision like the 5th episode is and the 8th episode is so good because Jet Wilkinson did like really cool shots of like
Yeah.
the different angles and things like that of the big scenes in those episodes that were very much like uniquely her, which is why I always want her to come back because I
Hmm.
loved those so much. But it's just like there you need to like let people put their own kind of unique ideas into this world. That's what makes it fun, but like sometimes people don't let people do that. Like the
Yeah.
the best example is Star Wars.
Hmm.
Star Wars doesn't let people do that. That's why a lot of their movies and stuff are canceled before they're ever made because they
Yeah.
give in too much to like the angry part of the fan base. But they don't let people experiment and make their own thing. And like as much as I don't like The Last Jedi, which I don't like The Last Jedi a lot, I'm not going to be upset at them for letting Ryan Johnson do his own thing. I don't like the things that he did with everyone but Luke, but like I still am okay with them letting him do that. I want them to let people do things like that. Even if
Hmm.
I don't like the execution of it, at least they like took chances and they did things that are different even if I hated it.
Yeah.
I still like that they let them do that. But now it's like they
Yeah.
don't let anybody do things like that. Like there's I remember when I was still in the Star Wars fandom, there were stories about how like different authors and things like that didn't even want to write Star Wars novels because of how much the fandom would attack people.
Hmm.
And N.K. Jemisin is one of the best authors in existence. And she said, like, yeah, that was me. Like she replied to one of their tweets talking about that, like at the Star Wars official account. And she
Mm-hmm.
said like, yeah, I don't want to deal with people harassing me. And so the idea that there could be a Star Wars novel written by N.K. Jemisin is like godlike. And the fact that we didn't get that because the fandom would harass her too much
Yeah.
because she would come up with really cool, fun ideas is so depressing. And like that's part of why I really like how Rick Riordan and Becky Riordan handle this stuff, because nothing is like overly sacred. Like there are things that are, but they're open to like hearing people out when they want to change things, to the point
Yeah.
that they're putting in a brand new character that doesn't exist into season 2. And so it makes me be sure that they're not doing that to their creators. And Becky saying that back in March was heard like wanting to defend the people that are involved in their show, and wanting like new directors and new writers and new actors and stuff to come in and feel like they can make these characters their own, instead of
Mm-hmm.
feeling like they have to like toe the line of what the fandom expects them to do.
Yeah.
And that's like what they should be doing.
Yeah.
That's what a production always should be doing. They should be defending the people. You don't want them to like, be horrible to the fans, but also too many times productions just take like the fan side of these things. They're afraid of them getting upset at them and not wanting to watch them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it just leads to like really toxic things happening afterwards. But either way, I think that's it. And um, a week from tomorrow will be the panels at Comic-Con, where they'll tell us everything in the world
Yeah, and
possible.
hopefully, like, because you said, like, they usually try to release stuff before that so the cast has things to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So, we'll probably have a lot more Percy Jackson series news next week. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
I'm still hoping for, like, a fuller trailer, so we'll see.
Mm-hmm. That'll
Um,
happen. There was
yeah.
an interview. Leah did an interview with another child actor, like friend of hers. It's a fun interview because they just talk about stuff they don't get asked, because
Hmm.
she's an actual like actor too and knows what to ask instead of the boring questions they get asked all the time.
Yeah.
And the way that Leah put it, and that was like, I haven't watched the official trailer, and she's like, see how I got around saying that. And
Yes.
so they have one. They're just like waiting for the opportune moment, I
Yeah, so
suppose.
she's probably seen, like, an edit of it,
Yeah.
like, a draft.
They all
Yeah.
have seen like the official trailer. It's just not this super sparkly official one that's going to be like officially announced officially, but it's the
Yes.
one. It's still like the same one. Um, it's a good interview with her anyway. She talks about stuff with like acting on set. Like she says in that this Sea of Monsters was the hardest season of anything that she's ever filmed ever in the history of her life. That was like
Yeah.
her like direct quote, which yeah, it would be. Every season of the show is going to challenge all of them more every single
Yeah, it's only
season.
gonna get harder, poor little Leah.
Yeah, for all of them, every season's going to be super hard. But
Yeah,
like that's what makes it like good for them, like to be challenged that way. But
exactly.
it's good for her because her character she said like, I have to be vulnerable, and I have to like break down in times, or like just be vulnerable and talk about things. And she's like, that was hard for me. And it's like, yeah, it's like, how rare is it to happen where a character like her gets, and played by a black girl, gets to be that sort of character that is vulnerable, that
Hmm.
like has flaws, but people like sit there and listen and hear her out and about those flaws, instead of just like tossing them aside as soon as they show that they're a real person. Like
Yeah,
Annabeth is a 3D like complex person that makes mistakes sometimes, and she gets to play those.
yeah.
That's really great. Um, but yeah, so there'll be things like that, and whatever else they decide to tell us, because they like to be random. Who
Hmm.
knows? Becky might use us for some more market research
Yeah.
later on
Yeah, if you
Threads.
guys aren't following already, follow Becky on Threads. Like, you got
Yeah,
to. Rick Riordan's a little, he doesn't give us as much. Like, he likes to troll.
yeah,
Because I
it's
saw
Rick.
the one time I checked his Blue Sky this past week, it was like, I'm working on redacted and redacted along with redacted.
Yeah,
Like,
he was like, I'm having like a meeting about redacted. We're having another meeting about redacted. We're doing notes about redacted, and I'll talk to you guys later about redacted. Like, join me
yes.
later for redacted.
Yeah, like I love Uncle Rick loves to troll, so
Always.
yeah. So hopefully we'll have a lot more for you guys next week. For Cersei, hold on. I always have to like the inclusive counting you have to do with chapters
I
is what
know.
gets me. So we're starting on 19, 20, 21 are the ones that we are doing. Um,
We only
Hopefully
have a
it's
little. I was looking
yeah.
at it today when I was bored at work. There's like 130 pages left. So
Okay.
it's not that long. It's like 389 something like that pages. We're on like page 250.
Hmm.
So we're getting towards the end, which I'm sure is going to be weird angst about her child that I wish didn't exist.
And probably Odysseus, but I won't spoil the ending for
Yeah, I
people who
know.
are following along with us.
We'll see what happens, I suppose. And then we'll probably have Jean on again to talk about it all.
Yes, yeah. We got to get her live on TikTok working
Yeah.
correctly so we can have her be an actual co-host.
I'll remind her like sometime in the next couple days, like, hey, you should go randomly live because we're going to be done with this book in like 3 weeks. So you can go live and people can like see your face instead of just staring at me while you guys are just like floating boxes.
Yes, yeah.
That was really weird.
It was, yeah, but we'll get it tightened up for next time.
Hmm.
Yep. So that's all we have for you guys today. But yeah, we'll be back on Monday for Cersei, and then Wednesday for hopefully a trailer or at least news.
Yes.